Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. American Comics. I became Tony's younger brother. Chapter 41. 8 p.m. People in Manhattan discovered that there were particularly many police cars heading to Fifth Avenue tonight, with an average of 1 per minute, far exceeding the 5-minute standard. Someone followed along curiously, and after walking a certain distance, they found that the police cars were circling around a hotel, not letting anyone who appeared suspicious be spared. The 20-story hotel is brightly lit, and people coming and going shuttle between the windows. There are flower baskets on the left and right of the main entrance, and a red carpet in the middle leads directly to the hall along the steps. 4 sunny and handsome doormen in suits and ties are responsible for helping guests park their cars. Squeak. The red Porsche parked at the door. The blonde man with a slightly childish face helped his female companion out of the car. After checking the invitation, he entered the hall along the red carpet. The clean white walls with light-colored patterns, well-trimmed green plants in the corners, and warm lighting make people feel very comfortable. Change the previous chilling and silent style. At this moment, there are already many guests in the hall. All of them are well-dressed, with their female companions, communicating in small groups in small voices. Words cannot be separated from business and money. The blonde man loosened his tie, obviously not used to the occasion. The female companion also noticed his strangeness. She looked at the hall and found an empty sofa near the corner. She took his hand, leaned over and whispered, "Harry, the auction doesn't start until 9 o'clock, why don't we find a place to sit for a while?" "Listen to you, Mary." Harry happily agreed and took his girlfriend to the corner to sit down. He leaned on the sofa and couldn't help but take a deep breath, as if there was a scourge there. Noticing his girlfriend's suspicious gaze, he took a sip of water and explained, "My school in London is a boarding school, and I rarely have the opportunity to go home, let alone attend this kind of banquet. If it wasn't for my father's compulsory request, I won't come." "Oh, that's how it is." The female companion nodded in agreement, but did not answer the conversation. This kind of topic involves the internal relationship of other people's families, and she is not qualified to comment in her current capacity. She held the juice in her hands and took a sip, looking at the guests walking back and forth in the hall. After a quick glance just now, she realized that everyone present looked very familiar. Of course, it wasn't like she had met them several times on the street and thought they looked familiar. She has a good memory, and she quickly remembered that these people are regulars who often appear in major newspapers, and they are either rich or expensive. No one is worth less than a small goal. And to make these people willingly wait in the hall, the identity of the host of this banquet is definitely not easy. After much hesitation, curiosity finally prevailed. She put down the juice and moved her butt to the side. "Harry, who hosted this banquet? I don't think the identities of the people present are simple." Harry was also kicked out temporarily by his father. He still doesn't know who hosted the banquet, but he remembers that there seems to be a name on the invitation. He took out an invitation card with a black gold slip bottom and a golden hot edge from his arms. On the cover was written, "Wonder Auction." At the end is the owner's name, Rack Stark. Wow, it turns out it's an auction held by the Stark family. "I'm so lucky today," the female companion exclaimed, excitedly taking out Stark's mobile phone from her small bag and taking a photo. "I can't extricate myself from being addicted to it. Harry, hey, look at me, your boyfriend is still here." "Forget it, Mr. Lark, who proposed the concept of smart machines, is indeed a genius, and I can't compare to him." While drinking soda water, there was a sudden sound of beating at the door of the hotel. Come, everyone has a share, one for each person, ha 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 ha." I saw a middle-aged man with a slicked back hair, directing the security guard behind him to stuff tips into the doorman's hands, with a proud look on his face. In his arms was a woman dressed in colorful clothes. At the same time, he was afraid that others would not know that he was coming, so he deliberately pulled his throat and shouted into the hotel. "Recently, the company has made million points, and I, Justin Hammer, are not short of this money. It's almost written on my face that I'm an upstart." The expressions of everyone in the hall were wonderful, and I thought to myself, how can there be such a strange thing among us, who does not have the temperament of a billionaire at all? The more conflicted the heart is, the more honest the body will be. When Han Mo entered the hall, everyone gathered around him, asking for help and flattering him. Billionaires are also divided into ranks and ranks. After Stark Industries announced the closure of its weapons manufacturing department, Hanmo occupied most of the vacated market and made a lot of money. The company's stock price rose continuously and soon exceeded the 20 billion mark. Among the group of people who were present and arrived first, except for Harry's Osborne group, the others were only a fraction of Hammers. Don't worry about whether the business is right or not, just lick it until it feels comfortable first, maybe you'll need it one day. It turns out that Mr. Hanmo has arrived. It's been a long time. It's a great honor to meet you today. Congratulations to Chairman Hanmo. The stock has soared. It makes me envious. Congratulations. Ha 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 ha, everyone is too polite, it's just so. The arrival of Hanmo seemed to press the accelerator switch. There were many sports cars at the door and all kinds of heavyweights arrived one after another. Member of Parliament, Mayor, XX famous entrepreneur, Chairman of XX newspaper. At this point, tonight's main guests have almost all arrived. Lark walked down the spiral staircase, followed by Tony and others. Papa, good evening everyone, I kept you waiting for a long time. It is a great honor for all of you to come to my auction today. Honor. How many times did I play today? The group of people in front of him will be his main suppliers of mysterious items in the future, so there is no problem in being polite. Everyone was prepared to be ridiculed. After all, everyone in the Stark family was a jerk, but they didn't expect that Lark was so humble. Everyone carried the bridal sedan chair, everyone was an old fox, and hurriedly exchanged a wave of business. It's our honor. Yes, Mr. Stark is too polite. Lark warmly shook hands with them one by one, as if they were friends he hadn't seen for many years. Tony rolled his eyes as he watched. The happier you are laughing now, the more distressed you will be when the auction is over. His eyes especially swept over a few Mediterranean old men with potbellies, and the alluring female companions beside them. Considering that today is his brother's home game, Tony rarely put on a bad face, brought pepper, and chatted with a few people who looked pleasing to the eye. Among them was Harry. Among the crowd, a coquettish woman whispered in Mediterranean's ear. Visible to the naked eye, Mediterranean's face instantly turned red. His eyes swept over a certain detail, he swallowed hard, and couldn't help but ask. Mr. Stark, I don't know when the auction will start. I think everyone has arrived. Everyone was also very curious. The most powerful and wealthy bigwigs had arrived. It stands to reason that the auction should start. Could it be that there are more powerful characters not yet here? Lark smiled mysteriously and said, wait a little longer. Not long after, a black SUV parked at the door. A smirk flashed in Locke's eyes, and he pushed everyone away to greet him. Actively bent down to open the car door, and put his hands on the roof of the car very intimately. Ah, this. The crowd suddenly fell silent, and everyone looked at each other in blank dismay. It was really hard to imagine the identity of the person who asked Mr. Lark to lower his posture and open the door for him. Crash. The car door opened, and a glistening black marinated egg appeared in front of everyone. So bright. Fury wanted to close the door and let the driver leave at this moment. He was the chief of the secret department, the guardian who walked in the dark, not an entertainment star. With so many billionaires present, Lark clearly wanted to expose him to the public eye. As for why, he didn't know. Lark stretched out his right hand in a welcoming gesture. My lord, please, it is impossible to leave. Today I want to see what you are auctioning. Fury gave a calm hum, and got out of the car with a black windbreaker. Everyone was uncertain about the identity of this unfamiliar face, so they just nodded politely as a greeting. There are two beautiful figures in the back seat. Maria Hill wore a white ice silk dress with two tassels hanging from her waist, and her chestnut hair was draped behind her shoulders. There was light makeup on her face and a light layer of lipstick. The beautiful shape is eye-catching. Long time no see, Ms. Hill. Locke stretched out his hand and led her out of the car in a gentlemanly manner. Hill looked at this smiling face, and thought of someone's cheap expression that night, and said coldly, "It's better not to see him." She picked up her skirt and got out of the car, but she didn't want her high heels to slip on the steps, causing her body to lose balance and fall backwards. Seeing that his head was about to hit the roof of the car, a slender hand stretched out from inside the car and pressed it against his waist. Natasha's charming and tickling voice echoed in everyone's ears. Hey, I saw that stinky man can't even walk. Do you want me to help you? Her jade hand was wrapped around her waist, and immediately a pair of red high heels stepped on the steps. Natasha hugged Hill and got out of the car. One is cool and the other is charming. Gudong. Gudong. Natasha gave a cold hum, and entered the hall with the beauty in her arms. A group of LSPs hurriedly followed. In the hall, Tony watched the two people leave, sighed secretly, and raised his wine glass. Pity. Pepper had noticed his eyes a long time ago, and tilted his head quietly. What's the pity? Tony's eyelids twitched. It's a pity that the beauty is a thief. You know what's going on. Pepper smiled, put down the plum juice, and followed the crowd to take the elevator upstairs. Tony shuddered. So close. Almost flipped over again. Entering the auction hall, there were no names written on the luxurious seats, but everyone was very conscious and sat down in order of wealth, starting from the last two rows. Today is the first day of the opening of the auction, and Lark did not open a box. After all, the things he auctioned are unusual. Let everyone get to know each other first and get to know them better. Locke was the last to enter the hall. Whether it was intentional or not, the place left for him by the crowd was next to Hill, and next to it was naturally Natasha. At this moment, she was looking at Lark with playful eyes. Mr. Lark, please do it. Lark sat down calmly. Tony sat obediently on the right side of Pepper, looking intently at the stage as if there were flowers there. It's not Rucker's style to be blind. After everyone sat down, there was a dang, and Winston came out from behind the stage dressed as an auctioneer. The gold-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose made him look gentle and refined. But the eyes of the crowd were sharp, and there was a gasp of air from the audience. The eyelids of the black stewed egg also jumped. This guy is a ruthless character in their file, and he might bleed a lot tonight. There are some people here that I couldn't afford to offend before. Winston sighed inwardly, picked up a hammer and knocked on the auction table, and the scene fell silent instantly. Boom. Everyone, the rules for today's auction items are very simple. The highest bidder wins, no credit will be given. It was really simple and no one questioned it. Winston took out an invitation. I believe everyone knows that our theme today is auction of rare objects. So, what is a wonder? Quote, everyone present is a smart person, so don't be too familiar with this simple foil method. Due to Winston's reputation on the road, some people still pretended to ask. Yes, what is a strange object? Winston chuckled and played the polished story of the famous Federal, Elm Street murders, on the big screen. Everything is explained as the claw has magical power, so the protagonist of the murder case has the ability to travel through dreams and kill people invisible after picking it up. Lark didn't know the real situation, but he guessed that it had something to do with the devil. After all, this was American comics. A place where murderers and demons abound. Unexpectedly, the black marinated egg did not refute. But this also makes sense. Among the forces of ordinary people, the one who knows the most about the supernatural is S.H.I.E.L.D., not one of them. After the PPT was finished, Winston struck while the iron was hot and asked someone to bring up the lot. If he didn't show something real, he knew that no matter how much he said, the people below would not believe it. Boom. Winston struck with the hammer and cried out. Please give us the number 1 lot, the essence of life. As soon as these words came out, several middle-aged men with pot bellies under the stage became short of breath for a moment, clenched their hands tightly, and looked at the stage with fiery eyes. Under the eyes of everyone, the waiter came out carrying a silver tray with a piece of soft off-white cloth on it, with a high protrusion in the middle, like a bottle. Winston pulled it open with a swish, and inside was a glass crystal bottle about 10 centimeters high. The liquid inside was shining brightly under the light. Among other things, this appearance is worth a lot of money. Winston put on a pair of gloves on the spot, carefully held the mouth of the bottle, stretched out his hand and showed it below. A few potbellies stared straight at it, refusing to leave for a moment. They had already inquired about the effect of this potion from some sources before. Mr. Winston, don't whet your appetite and get started quickly. Yes, we can start while it's still early. The man in black pointed at the bald man next to him, and said mockingly, ha ha, you old guy, you must have been caught by me. You even bragged to me that you were fierce. Can this be tolerated? The bald man stretched out his hand to pat, and immediately counterattacked. If you have the ability, don't pat later. The man in black flicked his black and beautiful hair, and said to himself, "Cut, I'll take a photo for my friend." Other theatergoers. I'm afraid the friend you mentioned is not yourself. Ahem, everyone, this baby is not as simple as you think. Winston coughed and pulled the errant car back. After our verification, only 10 milliliters is needed to restore the full energy of ordinary people in half a minute. I believe everyone present is very clear about the meaning of this. When the order was reached, Winston stopped talking and put the bottle back on the tray, giving them time to think. The eyes of the 3 members of S.H.I.E.L.D. flashed brightly at the same time. They were struggling in the hail of bullets, and they understood the preciousness of recovering energy in a short time. The venue fell silent, and everyone's brains were spinning rapidly. Several chairmen who were engaged in the biological field have started calling to raise funds. As the first auction item to appear, the starting price is definitely not high, but it can't stand up to the large number of people present. One is rich and the other is rich. If you miss out on such a magical potion later because of tens of thousands of dollars, you will not cry to death. If the rival company gets it and researches something extraordinary, it will really be over. Market competition is scary. Now one step is faster, each step is faster. In the last row, a man in a suit hangs up the phone with a sad face. His company is not doing well recently and cannot raise funds. I don't know if I missed this time, huh? His eyes lit up. He raised his hand like a primary school student and asked, "Mr. Winston, does this, Essence of Life, only have this bottle?" Quote, "Yes, we want to know too." Winston held out 3 fingers, 3 bottles. Call, it's okay. When the call ended, Winston struck with a hammer. The starting price for the first bottle of Essence of Life is 1 million, and each increase in price shall not be less than 100,000. Starting now. As soon as the words fell, there was a lot of bidding below. 1,100,000. 1,300,000. 1,500,000. Looking at the lively scene, Tony suddenly remembered something. He took out his phone and checked it out, then passed Pepper, patted Lark's shoulder and asked, "How about we have another Stark Industries Expo? Is Iron Man 2 coming?" Poor old Han Mo. Okay, you can figure it out. Whiplash. Flying dragon riding face, it is impossible to lose. Seeing that he agreed, Tony immediately pulled Pepper and started discussing. The Stark Industrial Expo is open to the whole world, and the amount of engineering is not generally large, and there are many things that must be approved by the chairman. Tony can't be a hands-off shopkeeper like in the movie. Even Rucker couldn't escape, and the tool man was sure. During the conversation, the first bottle of Kiel water was sold. With a wicked smile, Winston banged the hammer for the nth time. Bang, let us congratulate director Nick Fury for successfully winning the first bottle of Essence of Life for 10 million. The situation is ruthless and he will not miss any opportunity to add insult to injury. He stood up abruptly, clapping his hands loudly. Crack, 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 crack. Congratulations to Commissioner Nick Fury. The big boss took the lead, and others naturally followed. There was thunderous applause in the venue, and those who didn't understand thought it was an award ceremony. Pop, paw, 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 congratulations, congratulations. Pop, paw, 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 congratulations, congratulations. Spiced corned egg. Looking at his old face, Luck felt as if he had just made ice cream. In one word, refreshing. It fits that sentence perfectly. I hit you on the left cheek, but you still have to smile and put the right cheek on it. And say, well played. After the applause ended, Lockmay held the phone happily and continued to watch the video. In the video, 4 beauties in black stockings are doing various seductive moves, with little red hearts appearing all over their faces. It has 8 million views. LSP is really powerful. I didn't expect you to like this. Hill, the iceberg beauty, said suddenly, and even the air seemed to have turned cold. Ha. Lark smiled. He was not ashamed, but proud. He clicked on the homepage to play one by one. Have you watched the news recently? For example. Queen's Bank robbery. Hill nodded and shook his head. I heard it, but ordinary cases are not our responsibility. Didn't the news say that the robbers gave back the 800,000 they took? Lark didn't answer. He put his phone between the two of them, pointed at the playback volume on the screen, and asked, "Do you know how much incentive you can get for 8 million views?" Bingshan Beauty frowned. She was usually busy with work and didn't know much about it. The bureau has only studied his smartphone, not this one. At this time, a charming voice replied, "About $20. I saw Natasha took out the same Stark phone from the base of her thigh, clicked on the software skillfully, and turned to the accounts of the 4 beauties in the same frame. This account was just registered yesterday afternoon. It specializes in lines. In just one day, 3 videos exceeded 500 million views and received million views." These words, sour. Oh, it's a pity. Natasha lay back after finishing speaking, showing off her beautiful figure without any scruples. "I am an invisible agent." Natasha was born into a family of agents, and has seen the darkest side of people's hearts since she was a child, until today. "I don't want to live an ordinary life in my heart." Lark just nodded. After all, the opposite is the trump card agent, who knows if she is acting. Hill was already smart. After this reminder, combined with the number of robbers reported in the news, he instantly understood that these 4 delicate beauties were the robbers. Tony lost in drag racing that day, and planned to compete again in anger. It only took Winston half an hour for the robber's real identity to be sent to his mobile phone, and then, "Of course I choose to forgive them. Re-employment." The conversation started, and Hill continued to ask, "Do you have a lot of that potion called life essence, and put it up for auction?" Finally come. Lark invited Nick Fury to participate in the auction. In addition to the mysterious item, there is another important thing. More on this later. Locke casually swiped his phone, and praised the beautiful ladies one by one. "Ms. Hill, my answer is not cheap, are you sure you want to know?" "Think, the price is up to you. Do you think I look like someone who is short of money?" Forehead. "Let's do this." Lark put away his phone and looked directly into the Iceberg Beauty's clear eyes, with a wicked smile on his lips. "I think." The surrounding area suddenly became quiet. Natasha blatantly tilted her head to eavesdrop, with words written all over her head. "I knew you were greedy for other people's bodies. Stark doesn't have a good thing." Pepper hugged Tony's head, and the two of them were stuck behind Lark in a strange posture. Lark has been in a coma for 15 years and is now 30 years old. Normal federal people don't talk about children, but their girlfriends must have changed a lot. What about Lark, commonly known as Virgin? Now he is still staying with a group of old men with 8-pack abs every day. If something happens, Howard will probably have to lift his coffin. Pepper and the two were extremely anxious. This Iceberg Beauty is not bad. She has a beautiful person and a good personality. Both of them are very satisfied with it. Agent, it's a small matter. Anyway, Winston does the same job. The worst thing is that he should step down and make way for others. You see, everything is well arranged. Winston. Hey, do you really think my extraordinary body is fake? I am so arrogant to eavesdrop. Ahem, Ms. Hill, you ask a question, how about I ask you a question too? You can't lie. If it's inconvenient to tell you, you don't have to answer and ask another question. How? My plan is fair. Wait a minute. Hill pondered for a moment, and then grabbed Natasha's phone from her lap to send a text message. With Tony and the artificial intelligence present, they did not wear headsets today, and their mobile phones were encrypted and modified so that they would not be cracked. As soon as the second bottle of Essence of Life went on sale, the price soared to 8 million, and soon exceeded the upper limit of 10 million. In the last blow, everyone allowed Fury to take advantage because of his identity as the mysterious director. This time, for the sake of wealth and life, it must be won no matter what. Fury raised his hands one after another, but was quickly suppressed by everyone. He had no choice but to compete with these capitalists with a dark face. Fortunately, his biggest advantage is money. Although the Stark Group's equity dividend will not be paid until the end of the year, there is still a board of directors. Hill reported the case of the manor, and he used Tony Stark's armor to easily prevaricate it, and he also applied for a batch of funds by the way. It's hard to make money. Director Fury offered 13 million, is there anything higher? 13 million for the first time, 13 million for the second time, 1,000. Okay, Mr. Osborn offers 14 million. Harry Osborn. Fury raised his hand halfway and put it down again, no longer participating in the auction. It is no secret in the top circles that the Osborne family has a genetic disease, and he naturally knows it too. At the same time, according to the information in the bureau, Norman's time is running out, and this bottle of mysterious life essence has undoubtedly become his last hope. A billionaire's counterattack on the deathbed, no one in the room is willing to learn. Sure enough, after Harry made the bid, several directors hesitated and still did not raise their hands. In the end, he successfully won the bottle of essence of life. Are there any mysterious bosses present? Are there any dying people? Then the third bottle should be our turn, right? Driven by such inertial thinking, the third bottle was like a rocket, and the price climbed straight up, starting the slaughterhouse mode. Fury raised his hand twice symbolically, and after exceeding his heart's price, he did not participate again, leaving the funds for the following items. Ding! Fury took out his mobile phone, and the content of the text message was the same as what Lark said, a question and an answer. Without thinking, he replied directly. Promise him, ask all our previous guesses, focus on testing the source of his ability, and ask about Coulson's situation by the way. Click send. After receiving the answer, Hill immediately returned to work. She gestured, put the phone between the two of them, and turned on the recorder. Then let's start. Lark also waited for a long time. Hearing this, his thumb left the screen and pointed at Winston, who was completely immersed in the role of auctioneer on the stage, and said, Yes, but it must be stated in advance that when the third bottle of life essence is sold, the question and answer session will officially end. That's enough. Hurry up and ask 3 questions. Hill nodded. Can. Lark raised his hand. Ladies first. Hill is not polite. The auction may end at any time. She must hurry up. First question, do you have a lot of life essence? Quote. It's not bad. The output is 100 milliliters in 3 days. Lark answered truthfully, with sincere eyes. He really didn't lie. The essence of life equals dragon bone water. If you soak it, it will be there. If you don't soak it, it won't exist. By the way, after the Yumanji gem swallowed the dragon Shoulao that day, the dragon bone Rubik's Cube was still about the size of a fingernail. After enlarging it, it was almost a cube. Hill immediately concluded that he had mastered the stable production method of essence of life. According to the rules, she held out her hand to indicate that it was your turn. Lark, where did the Stark Industries shares you took out last time come from? The date on the document was 20 years ago. At that time, Stark Industries was just established and no shares were sold to the outside world. Hilton paused for a moment, not expecting his question to be so simple. Our organization was established very early and has invested in many potential groups and companies, many of which are now famous in the world. Yes, so one pole down is full of snakes. Lark nodded, pretending to be enlightened. Hill, where did your jaguars come from? As long as they know how to make essence of life, they can slowly explore the source. After a period of hard work, Barbara finally successfully broke into Tony's secretary team in the first 2 days. At the same time, she took it for granted that during Hawkeye's training, he secretly used dragon bone water, so his body could recover so quickly. Naturally, it was impossible for Lark to tell her the real answer to this question, so he simply replied about South America. Not a lie, he did get a jaguar from there through a secret channel. With the power of S.H.I.E.L.D., we can definitely find out this matter. Whether you believe it or not is none of my business. The bidding for the third bottle of Kiel water on the stage has come to an end, and only 2 people are still competing. Lark hurriedly asked, according to what I know about your organization, the stake in the Stark Group must be more than money. If I'm not wrong, you must have invited Howard to join you. At the same time, with his personality, he must have agreed, right? Quote. After speaking, Lark looked at her with a smile, tapping his fingers rhythmically on his thigh. Winston received the signal, picked the highest position and made a direct quotation, and spit all over the place. 14 million for the first time, 14 million for the second time, 1,000. You. Hill suddenly raised his head, obviously unprepared for Winston's sudden acceleration, but the hammer had already been raised, and it was too late to ask any more questions. She asked hurriedly, Coulson. Lark raised his hand to interrupt. You haven't answered my question yet. Shet, you guessed right, your father joined us. Hill swears, grabs his hand and asks. How come Coulson? Bang. Congratulations to the chairman for successfully grabbing this bottle of life essence. It looks like it. The hammer fell, and the question and answer session officially ended. Just a little bit. Hill froze in place, holding Lark's hand in a daze, at a loss, his long eyelashes trembling slightly. After a while, she noticed a warmth coming from her palms, dispelling the cold air blown by the air conditioner. Ms. Hill, I didn't expect you, as an agent, to have such well-maintained skin without any calluses on your joints. After speaking, the owner of the voice squeezed her palm. Hill withdrew his hand and said coldly, Mr. Stark hasn't answered my question yet. Luck pointed to the stage where no words were spoken and the question and answer session was over. Hill was unwilling to give in. He was only missing the last point, and it was all the fault of that Winston. She opened her mouth to fight for the last time, but she didn't expect that Locke had already got up and walked to the stage, leaving behind a sentence. If you want Coulson, give me my father's relics in exchange. Relics? How could he know? Who told him? Could it be? Click. Hill's pupils shrank suddenly. His goal from the beginning was the Howard relic. What's in Howard's relics? Hill's hands were frozen in the air, and her small mouth could not be closed for a long time. 3 questions kept echoing in her mind. Where did the shares come from? Howard joined you. Where is the relic left by Howard? One leaf blinds the eyes. They wanted to know Lark's secrets so much that they subconsciously ignored the connection between the problems, and Winston's sudden attack did not give her time to think carefully. Winston was now radiant and full of energy. Oh, I was just addicted to being an auctioneer, but I didn't expect to successfully sell 3 bottles of foot-washing water for a sky-high price. I'm really amazing. Please tell me who else. Lark got up and walked over here. Cough cough, the boss is awesome. Winston's smile faded and he shouted to the audience, let us welcome Mr. Lark Stark. He will introduce everyone to the last and most important auction item tonight. Huh, is there a more magical treasure than these 3 bottles of water? Do you know what it is? I don't know, I haven't heard of it. Let me see. Voices, waving arms, and moving heads covered up all the movements happening in the corner. Fury narrowed his eyes slightly, guessing what would be under the soft cloth with a sharp corner exposed. Ding, got results. Freemy took out her cell phone, her dark old face raised slightly. Through monitoring and summarizing Locke during this period, the psychological reports on him on the desk have piled up. The results are surprisingly consistent. It can be summed up in 12 words. Externally, he is cold-blooded and ruthless. Internally, he is gentle and passionate. Contrary to the unrestrained love and freedom of the Stark family, he couldn't figure out why Locke had such extreme 2 personalities. Fortunately, he is still a pure man who is interested in women. This can be vaguely seen from the reports submitted by Hawkeye several times. Hill's performance when he got off the car further proved this point, so he was % sure that Hill would definitely be able to produce information. Fu Rui happily clicked on the recording, and then truly experienced what Sichuan opera face-changing meant. It only took 0.1 seconds from the realization to the shock. Unlike Hill, he did know that Howard left something in the relic, but it was a pity that the group of trash under him could not figure it out after decades of analysis. Now that even Lark asks, then it is certain that the things Howard left in the relics are definitely not simple. Then, should I hand it over? Fury subconsciously squinted his eyes, his brain working rapidly, thinking about the pros and cons. Will the good-natured Rucker give him time to think? Will not. Lark walked onto the stage and opened the soft cloth. Suddenly, a 1.5-meter-long black and red sword with strange patterns painted on the handle appeared in front of everyone. Lark spread his fingers to hold the handle of the knife and pulled it out. Everything was dim and silent until it disappeared into the world. The beating heartbeat echoed in my ears, and there was only that brilliant golden light in front of my eyes. As if that is the only one in the world. It moved, the golden knife swept across the air, and an illusory knife made of golden light suddenly flew out, across the space and hit the wall. Boom! The bright lights in the corridor swept the dust and hit the ground, forming a clearly visible crescent. Just like someone's mood at this moment. Silence. You can hear a pin drop in the huge auction hall. Everyone stood stupidly, with dull eyes, like a villain who had lost his soul. The crescent moon was reflected in his eyes. After a long time, someone finally hesitated and spoke first. Then, is that true? Someone, please pinch me. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and pinched his leg hard. He felt nothing, and he said disappointedly, "It doesn't hurt at all." "It's really a lie. You pinched me." The man in black next to him gritted his teeth. He grabbed his collar with both hands and lifted him into the air. His sleeves were hanging down, and the two scorpion tail hooks on his arms were flashing with cold light. With a man in a suit on his head, he said sullenly, "It's very cool to pinch, isn't it? I'll make you feel good later. Turn over. God." After saying that, he threw his hands and the man in the suit collapsed on the chair, his legs shaking non-stop. As I said before, the billionaires here are divided into 3 or 6 grades. In fact, apart from net worth, they are also divided into occupations. It just so happens that this man in black with tattoos has 2 security companies under his command. Nature, everyone understands. When the people around him saw this, instead of helping him, their eyes flickered. If he dies, will my market share increase? After tidying up the unsightly things, the man in black straightened his clothes, put on a humble smile, and bent over at 90 degrees to the stage, slamming his head on the seat, but he didn't make a sound. "Mr. Stark, I'm really sorry for causing you any trouble. I'll have someone send me an apology later. Please forgive me." After his reminder, everyone suddenly came to their senses. This is the Continental Hotel. As we all know, there is an iron rule in the rules of the Continental Hotel: no blood is allowed in the hotel. Everyone looked down, and the man in the suit did not bleed. So, it should be fine, right? The man in black was hunched over, thinking the same as everyone else. He was even thinking about how to take the man in the suit's company under him. "Childish," Fury blurted out. "This scene is very similar to the entrance to the manor that day." Sure enough, as soon as he finished speaking, a golden light that was even more brilliant than before fell from the sky. The man in black couldn't even scream, and the seat was split into 2 pieces. Neat and smooth, half of the body fell down and landed in the arms of the man in the suit. Through the chest, the heart as big as a fist was still working hard, and the thumping sound hit his heart. As expected, he succeeded. Vomit. The stench filled the air, and the air in the hall instantly became bad. Many people reacted instantly when they were stimulated, their faces contorted and their throats moved. Mouth. Boom. The handle of the knife hit the table, and the power of the dragon exploded, like Hong Zhang Dalu. Lark's cold voice made them hold back their vomiting, causing their faces to turn red. "Don't spit. Sit down." PFF'd. The movements were uniform. Locke's sharp eyes swept across the bottom, and everyone felt as if a sharp knife had been drawn across their bodies. Feeling cold all over the body, Lark's sword was sheathed and placed on the auction table. "Next, let me make a long story short, this knife is not for sale." The remaining power was still there, and no one dared to refute, but there was great doubt in their eyes. "If you don't want to sell it, why are you showing off?" Soon, Lark gave the answer. He took out a crystal ball from his pocket. When he got close to the long knife, a faint golden light appeared inside the crystal ball. This is called a mysterious object detector. Just place it around an object with mysterious energy, and it will emit light with different brightnesses according to the intensity of the energy contained. Locke didn't give them a chance to respond, and continued, "Next, the hotel will have an appraisal meeting every month. As long as you send the items over, I will buy items with energy based on points. The points can be exchanged for various things from me, including the essence of life, and the long knife in my hand, as well as items added in the future." Quote. After Lark finished speaking, he gave a look, and several hotel employees handed out black booklets one by one. 084. Fury snatched the booklet with a bang, his sudden movement startling the employees. He immediately opened the booklet. At the beginning, there were 2 big characters, warning, and a rule was written in red ink on the back. Any mysterious items identified in the hotel can only be purchased by the hotel and cannot be taken away. The implication is that from the moment you step into the hotel, the mysterious item in your hand is no longer yours. Overbearing. It didn't write what would happen if the rules were violated, but everyone has seen the rumors during this period and the fate of that person just now. No one had time to think about anything else, so they immediately turned to the back and saw some strange things: pots, bowls, ladles, pots, knives, vases, scissors. Next to the picture is an explanation. The older the item and the rarer the item, the greater the probability of possessing mysterious energy. The small booklet opened the door to a new world for everyone, and everyone read it very carefully, not missing every detail. After saying so much, Lark was also a little thirsty. He threw the long knife away, inserted it under Fury's feet, and immediately unscrewed the bottle cap and drank water. Try it. Fury closed the book and stuffed it into his pocket, looking at the long knife carefully. The scabbard is black and gray, the handle is severely worn, and the cotton thread wrapped around it is very rough. There are traces of time everywhere. Just like the brochure said. It is similar to the 084 items confiscated that year. Fury thought for a moment, then reached for the handle of the knife. Buzz! The golden sword was unsheathed, and a surging power was transmitted from the blade. He stood tall and straight. He felt that he could tear the sky apart now. All living beings are ants. On, hack them down. Hack them down. Ants shouldn't live. Cut, cut, cut. Infinite evil thoughts erupted in his heart. Fury raised his head suddenly, his eyes were red, and he raised his long knife high. Die! The bright golden light reflected on the book, everyone looked up, and a long knife that was even bigger than before fell down. The crowd exploded in an instant, reacting quickly and dragging the female partner to the side, for fear of being chopped in half if they were too slow. Those who are old or miserable, their reactions are slow, and they can't run. They can only watch the blade getting closer and closer to them, and swear that if they survive, they must make that black marinated egg look good. Run! That old guy is crazy. Hill and Natasha naturally noticed such a big movement. They stood up suddenly and ran away without caring about the skirts they were wearing. They shouted. Nick Fury, put the knife down, you can't kill. Director, put down the knife. Seeing that the director didn't react at all, and the long knife was about to fall, Natasha suddenly thought, swung her body in the air, swung out her right hand, and the modified Stark mobile phone arced in the air, hitting Lu Dan in the back of the head. Boom! The phone slapped to the ground, but Fury still didn't respond. His eyes were completely filled with red, bursting out with a bloodthirsty light. Hill hated this hall so much at this moment. Why did it make it so wide? Mayors, congressmen, and chairmen of more than a dozen large companies, once all of these people die at the hands of Fury, tomorrow the strategy bureau will have to be disbanded and subject to review. But she was so far away, there was nothing she could do. If she had a gun with her, she could give it to him, but now she could only worry and watch the long knife fall little by little. Suddenly, he saw someone standing on the stage staring at her and saying something. The amazing thing is that she actually understood. Change, or not, change, 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 Hill yelled. She has no choice. Ha, deal. Lark burst out the water bottle with a loud laugh, sprinted, jumped up high, his feet glowed with an imperceptible golden glow, and headed straight for the shiny braised egg. Boom, crack, the marinated egg, whose mind was occupied by power, would not hide at all. He got a solid kick on his left shoulder, 2 crisp clicks, and his arm deformed. Then the whole person flew out and overturned several rows of seats. Before landing, Locke's extraordinary body has already sensed that his heartbeat is weakening. At the same time, the long knife was hit and flipped in the air, splitting the auction platform in two. Winston and the 2 waiters ran away when they saw this. Crack, boom, no matter how good the material is, it won't work if it loses its support. The stage, where the fresh people appeared successfully collapsed and dust was everywhere. The 3 of Winston covered their mouths and noses, and shouted as they walked with their chicken coop heads on their heads. Puff, puff, puff. Is anyone hurt? Everyone is all right. In the aftermath of the catastrophe, a group of old men stretched out on the ground and breathed heavily, cursing and greeting the braised Dan's family. It's a pity that I suffered from not being able to speak Chinese, so there were only a few sentences back and forth. Monotonous. Hill and Natasha went straight to the middle of the hall. After climbing over the vertical bench, they saw Fury, who was bent at 90 degrees, with his butt facing down and stuck between the seats, with bubbles bubbling out of his mouth. How to save this? The 2 circled back and forth, unable to make a move. The bones are broken like this. If you move a little bit, maybe the medical team hasn't arrived yet, so he will belch first. The most important thing now is to find a way to hang his life. The eyes of the two people brightened at the same time. The essence of life. The essence of life. Natasha was immediately responsible for contacting the medical team, and Hill found Laxo and asked for the potion he had just taken. Locke sighed with emotion. Life is so great, and asked to give her the potion. Fury can't die yet, although he is very dark, very dark, very dark, does not follow the rules, and likes to take advantage. One thing is that he is not a madman. Once Fury is dead now, Pierce will take over S.H.I.E.L.D., and the situation will suddenly turn against him. You can only be a thief for 1,000 days, but there is no way to prevent a thief for 1,000 days. To kill snakes, you have to do it all at once. The long knife was sheathed and placed in Winston's hand, and Lark stepped over to help everyone lying on the ground up one by one. When it comes to acting, you have to stick to it till the end. I'm really sorry, everyone, it was my carelessness that caused such a big mistake. Well, to express my apologies, I will pay double the price for the mysterious item you are selling for the first time. How about it? Locke kindly shook the dust off his body for the mayor. Everyone has nothing to do. After experiencing it for themselves, the fear of mysterious items has not subsided, but has risen again. The people present are already at the top of the human pyramid, enjoying everything they should enjoy on the material level. Now it's the turn of the spirit. What if I can control that power? Everyone laughed. From Lark, after getting the name of the Fury organization, they left one after another. The booklet was tightly held in my bosom, for fear of dropping it. When leaving the hotel, by chance, I ran into Fury's medical team who came to rescue Fury. Natasha waited for a long time without seeing anyone, and hurriedly pressed the elevator, and then saw a white coat lying on the floor inside. When a billionaire goes out, who doesn't have 3 or 5 bodyguards around him? No way, Natasha could only call the second batch. Fortunately, there was no accident this time, and the black marinated eggs were successfully carried onto the car. Before leaving, Hill left an exchange time. At dawn, Howard's relics will be delivered on time. So far, the fruits of victory have been planted, and the first auction has been completely successful. Hotel rooftop. Tony, who had been the background board all night, walked over to Locke with a glass of wine and sat down. He didn't speak, just took a sip from time to time. His expression was sometimes puzzled, sometimes guilty, and sometimes happy, a bit like suffering from early schizophrenia syndrome. Lark closed his eyes and switched back and forth between several birds. SUVs and ambulances shuttled through the steel forest, and finally parted in front of a triangular building on the border between Manhattan and the Bronx. One left and one right. The SUV stopped, and Hill stepped on high heels and entered the elevator and went straight to the top floor. The phone rang, and the caller, Secretary Pierce. Hill took a deep breath to stabilize his emotions. The phone was connected, and Pierce questioned, "Agent Hill, I received a medical report of Fury's serious injury. What's going on?" According to the security measures of the Bureau of Strategy, agents above the 8th level will automatically notify their superiors in case of an accident, and Fury's superior is Pierce. Hill quickly explained that she was still busy asking the following people to sort out Howard's belongings. Minister Pierce, what happened is this. Director Fury lost control of the long knife after holding it, and almost killed a dozen group directors. The essence of life stabilized the injury. The other end of the phone was silent for more than 10 seconds, and then said, "So, that Lark not only knows about mysterious items, he even knows how to make them, right?" "Correct." Pierce's voice changed from questioning to soft. "Very good, you did the right thing. You can use the scraps left by Howard to exchange for Agent Coulson. It's not a loss. As for Fury, let the medical team rescue him at all costs. I have arranged a flight and I expect to arrive at dawn." The next day, as the sun rose, a Quinjet fighter jet landed on the hotel rooftop on time, and Scarface Rumlow pushed 2 large boxes out of the hatch. Looking around, he only saw the 4 of them. He stretched out his left foot to block the rollers of the box, and said vigilantly, "Where is Coulson? The order I received is to exchange." Lark nodded, and Hatham waved his hand and walked towards the interior of the hotel. "Follow me." Rumlow's eyes flashed and he quickly followed. On the spot, Lark whispered something in Winston's ear, and Tony dragged the box onto Stark 1 and flew to the manor. Entering the building, Haytham took Rumlow to the left, entered the internal employee-only elevator, pressed the bottom button in front of him, and then played with the motionless wood. Rumlow crossed his arms and looked at the environment in the elevator openly. After a moment, his hoarse voice sounded. "Mr. Halson, have you considered changing your job? Staying in this small hotel with your talent is too much of a talent. Our organization urgently needs elites like you." Agent Rumlow, under what circumstances do you think a person would change jobs? Haytham said calmly without looking back. "I don't like the industry I'm in, the weird office atmosphere, the sleazy boss, the salary is too low, what else? I quite like killing people." Rumlow has a strange expression on his face, except for the first one, he guessed everything right. As we all know, the higher the status, the more eccentric the temper. It used to be Pierce, and now it's fury. Especially since he is still an undercover agent, it is too hard to pretend to be in S.H.I.E.L.D. where the wolves are looking around. Hemro stared straight into the tactical eyepiece, trying to change the subject so that he could continue recruiting Haytham. His eyes were all red, but he couldn't find it, so he had to give up, folded his arms and continued to pretend to be cold. He is an ace killer, proficient in 572 killing techniques, knows where the most vulnerable parts of the human body are, and can drive any type of individual vehicle in the world on land, sea, and air. He can. That is, can't speak, commonly known as low emotional intelligence. Ding! The elevator door opened, and the bright lights made Rumlow subconsciously squint. After adjusting, he saw a man in a black suit standing on the left and right of the door, holding a shotgun and a red armor-piercing bullet hanging from his waist. The corner of Rumlow's mouth twitched. Is it necessary to have such fierce firepower to defend a dungeon? Halson glanced back slightly, and said to the guard on the left, "Lead the way ahead, is that agent awake?" The guard turned off the safety of his gun and put it behind his back. He walked in front and said, "Not yet. People from the medical department came to see him yesterday and said that the wound on his chest is almost healed. He should wake up in the next few days." Haytham let out a hum, and didn't speak. Rumlow heard question marks from behind. What kind of injury did Coulson suffer? It took so long for the medical teams from Stark and the Continental Hotel to recover. Claw marks. It doesn't make sense. The corridor is about 2 meters wide and high, and with the bright lights overhead, it doesn't look cramped at all. On the cement walls on both sides, there is a silver-white metal iron door every few meters. You can check the situation inside through the upper and lower movable windows. Rumlow looked around quietly. 1, 2, 3, plus the end, there are a total of 11 cells, and the paint on the walls is obviously fresh. This Lark is indeed the same as in the report. Arrive. The guard stopped in front of the 4th cell on the left, opened the small window and took a look, then took out a key with a very classical flavor from his waist, and inserted it into the lock. Click. The metal iron gate opened, and Halson moved out of the way. He didn't intend to go in, so he shook his head. "No, the person you want." A single metal crib covered with striped sheets and bedding, 2 wires connected to an electrocardiogram machine at the head of the bed. A camera in the corner overhead is facing the bed. The former ace agent Coulson was lying peacefully on the hospital bed, with a slight smile on his lips, as if he had dreamed of beautiful things. Considering that he is deep in the wolf den, Rumlow confirmed that there is no problem, unplugged all the wires, helped him up, and carried him behind his back. The moment he got started, Rumlow was surprised by the 2 huge scars under his buttocks. What is the concept of 2 fingers wide? Rumlow hurried away with his back behind his back. Stark Manor. As soon as the plane landed, Harpy, who received the news in advance, immediately brought people over to carry things. The huge studio had been emptied in advance and cleaned up. "I don't know what equipment Tony needs to use, otherwise he can start working directly at this moment." After putting down the things, Lark told Tony what he knew and didn't leave. He found a bench to watch his performance. He reminded Tony that it took no effort for Tony to find ideas from the architecture, and then he only needed to spend a little time to come up with new elements. Seeing that he was on the right track, Lark's eyes and chest turned into blue-purple gems, and his mind sank into the sea of consciousness. An illusory figure stood in the dark and endless space. Looking closer, he looked exactly like Lark. From time to time, pale golden mist would appear around him, floating and blending into his body. As more and more mist was absorbed, the phantom became more and more solid. Satisfied with the steady strengthening of the soul, Locke immediately opened the panel and closed it immediately. Once again, I felt the fear of being dominated by poverty. Dragon power filtration progress 10%. Energy value balance 85. Swallowing the dragon and the keel did not increase the balance, which he never expected. He guessed that the energy level was too high, and the gems thought it was a bit cheap to exchange them for jaguars and armored rhinos. Hey, now I can only hope that after a month, those people can collect more mysterious items for me, otherwise I will lose the money to open the energy detector for 2 more days. After thinking for a while, Lark clicked on the extraordinary animal to redeem the list. He left a deep impression last time. Now that he has been promoted to extraordinary body, it is time to regain his place. Iron armored rhinoceros, a siege weapon, invincible. A rhino mutated by an unknown influence, when bathed in blood, it will go berserk. Price is 20 energy points. Well, no problem this time, Locke nodded in satisfaction and closed the panel. An azure blue light spot just floated in front of his eyes. Tony sat on a chair with his arms raised high. Countless blue light spots seemed to surround him as if he were people. They moved slowly with his movements, giving him a sense of science fiction and the future. Tony held it with one hand, and an extremely beautiful ball appeared in his palm. He successfully found the new element, but he didn't have much smile on his face. He threw it lightly with his right hand, and the ball flew in the air, and was caught by Locke with one hand. Look, the old man has been dead for 20 years and still wants to teach me lessons. Locke rubbed his nose. The original body was a scumbag when he was a child, that's why he didn't know anything about these things now. This is definitely not his fault, absolutely. Question: how to make a person happy? Answer: do what you love to do. The blue ball flew back and forth in his hand, forming a brilliant line of light. Tony, what do you think is the most important thing in a man's life? Aha, handsome. In the New York branch, 2 Quinjets landed at the same time. On the left, Rumlow pushed the unconscious Coulson, and on the right, an old man with gray hair and kind eyes came down. A dark blue suit with a white shirt and shiny leather shoes made him look extremely elegant. Several officers on duty straightened their bodies and saluted. Hello, Minister. Hello, Minister. Yeah, Pierce nodded slightly, looking like a big boss. Pierce walked to the wheelchair and patted Coulson's shoulder. Seeing that he didn't respond, he wondered, how did he do this? Coulson joined the Strategic Bureau training school and performed very well at the beginning. After graduation, he became an 8th-level agent at the fastest speed. It can be said that it surpasses the contemporary era and leads the way. Although Fury also made a lot of efforts, it still couldn't cover up his own brilliance. Naturally, they tried to recruit such outstanding talents, but unfortunately they all failed. For this reason, the undercover agent had to explode in the field, leaving no bones left. Rumlow lifted up Coulson's sleeve, revealing the claw marks underneath, and said, "It's the jaguar. I don't know why he was unconscious for so long. He needs to be sent to the medical department." Okay, Pierce knew about those miraculous leopards, and even the South America that Lark mentioned last night. He had already sent someone to investigate this morning, and news should come back in 2 days. Pierce was going to check on Fury, so he and Rumlow took the elevator to the medical department. Ding! The silver-white elevator door opened, and Hill was waiting outside with a man in a white coat. SHIELD employees came in and out of the spacious corridor. Hello, Minister. Lead the way ahead. By the way, how is Fury's situation now? Such a large organization cannot be leaderless. Hill stretched out his hand and led the way, with the white coat half a step behind. He clicked on the tablet device to explain the situation to him. After examination, Director Fury's left arm was comminuted ly fractured, and all cervical vertebrae in his body were broken. None of them were good. According to the normal situation, the chief had already died on the spot, relying on that magical energy to temporarily stabilize his injury. After overnight rescue, the chief was temporarily out of danger, but... The white coat paused, tapped the screen, and said solemnly, "The magical energy is rapidly draining, and it is expected to last for 3 days. with the current treatment technology in the Bureau, we can at most connect the broken cervical vertebrae, and we cannot guaranteeing the effect of nerve recovery. The director may be inseparable from the wheelchair in the future. The more he listened, the more ugly Pierce's face became. He didn't expect Fury to be so seriously injured. The white coat peeked at his expression, trembling his hands, and quickly added, "If the Bureau can get more of that magical energy and inject it into the chief, he will definitely be able to stand up." After speaking, he immediately shut up and followed behind obediently. According to the confidentiality regulations, the white coat does not know the existence of the essence of life, and the last sentence is purely self-protection. The employees in the Bureau are most afraid of hearing about vacations. If they are a little careless, they like to mention the desert package. During the conversation, everyone came to the ward at the end of the corridor. Rumlow handed Coulson to the medical staff halfway, and followed them into the ward. A black marinated egg was lying on the off-white hospital bed, and Fury, who was usually arrogant and domineering, was lying on the hospital bed with his back facing the sky. The entire spine is densely covered with sewing threads, like a 1,000-legged centipede lying on it. People who are afraid of it will definitely go crazy when they see it. An enhanced electrocardiogram machine was placed beside the bed, and the green lines jumped up and down rhythmically. Rumlow had a strange expression on his face. This scene seemed familiar. Pierce asked, "How long will it take for Fury to wake up?" The white coat replied, "It is expected that the energy will be restored very well in about 3 days." Pierce rubbed the ring and ordered, "Commander Hill, didn't that lark master the method of making the essence of life, so he asked people to bring a few 084 items to go for identification first, and return 2 bottles to try to make Fury recover as soon as possible. Quote, in addition, we will recall our scattered 084 items, seal them in a unified manner, and then divide them into a separate department to increase research on 084 items." Clear. Hill stepped forward and said that before being promoted to the board of directors, Pierce was the previous director, and it is normal to be familiar with these. After giving the order, Pierce called Rumlow out in front of Hill. Although he was promoted, he still retained his office in the New York branch. Entering the office, the two did a routine inspection, and then Pierce took out a small metal ball and put it on the table. He walked to the wine cabinet, took out a bottle of whiskey that had been preserved for a long time, unscrewed it, poured a shallow glass, put in 2 ice cubes, and shook it gently. He squatted with a wine glass, stood in front of the huge French window, looked at the agents walking back and forth below, and said, "How's the infiltration of the Stark Manor and New York Continental going?" Tony's battle armor represents the most cutting-edge individual weapons, which is of great strategic significance. Lark's Jaguar is just the opposite, belonging to the category of mysticism. If Hydra wants to rule the world, these 2 things must be obtained, especially the latter. The warehouse is full of 084 seized from Hydra that year. Not going well. Rumlow stammered. After sneaking into the factory last time and being exposed, the security department of the Stark Group started to clean up, and all our people were kicked out, leaving only 2 cleaners who cleaned the bathroom. And the shaking glass stopped, and the ice cube hit the wall of the glass with a crisp sound. What about the Continental Hotel? They have their own management system and don't recruit outsiders. This one is even more amazing. There are no seams, and you can't bite if you want to. The New York Continental Hotel has already left the high table. Having a headache, Pierce rubbed his temples, thought for a moment, and said, "Continue to infiltrate and try to sneak in before the Stark Group Expo is held, and then give them a surprise." Clear. Okay, you go down. Pierce took a sip of wine and sat down on the chair, thought about turning on the computer and connecting to a secret channel. Number 1. I have an up-to-date information on Tony Stark. Who is interested? Someone responded quickly below. No, tell me and listen. Number 3. Not interested, I'm still comfortable in my South America. No. 4. Private chat. A moment later, an encrypted request was sent, and Pierce just clicked in, and No immediately sent a message. Number 4. What are the conditions? Pierce took a sip of his wine and tapped on the keyboard. No. I will provide the information, and you will be responsible for the action. The fruit is divided into half, how about it? After 10 seconds. Number 4. Yes. Seeing the text message, the corners of Pierce's mouth turned up, and he immediately sent the news that Tony Stark lost to some small thieves in a drag racing a few days ago. Stark Manor. After all, the villa still couldn't get rid of the fate of being riddled with holes. Locke and Happy each held a hammer and crazily outputted the luxurious floor tiles. After being promoted to the extraordinary body, the power was strengthened again. Every time he swung it, the wooden handle bent into a crescent moon in the air, and fell to the ground to form a large hole. Seeing this, Hawkeye was terrified, and the fat on his body trembled. Fortunately, he was wearing a black t-shirt now, and no matter how sweaty he was, he didn't have to worry about burning his eyes. Bang! Happy, haven't you been training with Hawkeye all the time? Why are you still so plump? Are you being lazy? Bang! Boss, I went to the hospital for an examination 2 days ago. Bang! What did the doctor say? Bang! He said that I have a body type that is prone to obesity. No matter how much I exercise, if I just eat pizza, burgers, French fries, and cheese, the fat will keep rising. It's hopeless. Happy drooped his head and waved the hammer feebly. I was so sad when I heard the news. I thought back when I was a boxer, 8-pack abs were standard. Now that I think about it, it was my lost youth. Locke let out an ouch, and leaned against the hammer handle, clutching his waist, as if he was suffering. Happy threw away the hammer, put his big hands in the air, at a loss. Boss, what's wrong with you? Lark waved his hand. It's okay, I'm so angry. Forehead. The daily ridicule is over, and the two continue to work. Tony was manufacturing new equipment next door, and the sound of electric sizzle and blue-white light came through the glass door. Happy was obviously absent-minded, and looked up at the next door from time to time, showing a longing look. After a while, after hammering twice, Happy couldn't stand the temptation, couldn't help putting down the hammer, rubbing his hands and asking. Boss, the one that Boss Tony is building, can you make me one too? It's really handsome, and it was what I wanted most when I was a child. Who is the boss? Lark didn't even raise his head and continued to act as a tool. Bang. Okay, tell Tony what color you want and let him get it for you. As soon as the voice fell, a projection popped up from the ceiling, and Winston called. Problem occurs. Normally Winston would not call him. Lark put down his hammer, wiped his sweat symbolically, and then answered the call. Winston, what happened? Winston's surprised voice came from the other end of the phone. Boss, that shield-scarred face was outside the hotel with 3 boxes, and he said he wanted to carry out a mysterious item appraisal in advance. I didn't dare to agree easily, so I called come and ask. Shield, did they change their name? Correct. Okay, you let him be in the auction hall. Wait. Shield is in such a hurry to exchange it, it must be because of the injury of the black stewed egg. In this case, can I make a fool of myself? Anyway, they have so many 84s, they are not short of these 3 or 5. Luck tapped the handle of the hammer and quickly came up with an idea. He cleared his throat and said to the other end of the phone. Winston, if you tell them this way, you can say that you can appraise it now, but because the interval is too short, the crystal ball needs energy recovery, and they can only buy points at % off today. Okay boss, please wait for me. The phone was placed on the table without hanging up. First there was a burst of exclamation, then a quarrel. After a while, the phone was picked up again. Boss, they agreed, and Hatham has already taken them to the auction hall. Got it, I'll be right there. Lark hung up the phone and threw the hammer to Happy. Happy took it with a confused look on his face. Seeing that there were so many unopened holes in the wall, he suddenly lost his mind. Walking out of the basement, Locke casually took a bottle from the colorful drinks on the dining table, and unscrewed it after entering the cabin. Just after taking a sip, his whole face was twisted into a lump. It's so sour. Can humans drink this stuff? 6 minutes later, Lark walked into the auction room with a frown on his face. He looked so bitter and resentful that Rumlow was so frightened that he didn't dare to breathe. He opened the boxes in order. A silver white table knife, a silver white plate, and a silver white cup. Rumlow pushed the 3 things forward. Mr. Stark, please. It's still a 3-piece suit, Lark muttered. Wait. Lark stood up, walked to the many cabinets against the wall of the auction table, and took out the ordinary water planet from one of them. Rumlow peeked blatantly throughout the whole process. When he saw him hiding such an important treasure in such a place, he complained crazily in his heart and his eyes twitched. Returning to his seat, Luck held the crystal ball in both hands and approached the table knife. Rumlow's eyes widened and he stared straight at it without blinking. Lark chuckled and quietly activated the dragon's power. Suddenly, the crystal ball gave off a faint golden light and gradually condensed into an Arabic numeral, 2. So low, Rumlow frowned, suspicion written all over his face, and his eyes kept glancing back and forth between Lark and the crystal ball, trying to find evidence of his cheating. You didn't lie to me. Ha, what do you think the mysterious object is? Cabbage on the street. Digging out a sack. Lark rolled his eyes and started to complain. Negotiation is about overwhelming the opponent in terms of momentum and not giving him a chance to think. Boom. Lark reached out and slapped the table, and the knife flew up high. He stretched out his hand to grab it, picked it up with 2 fingers, and played with the knife in Rumlow's frightened eyes. He then thrust it into the table and penetrated it 3 times. Bah, the rules of appraisal have been stated before. Once you enter the hotel, everything belongs to me. You have no choice. Lark changed his tone and said impatiently, don't waste time. I make hundreds of millions every minute, and I don't have time to talk nonsense with you here. You, Cattle 13. Rumlow knew that he must have been cheated, but he had no choice. Currently, only Lark had the ability to identify divine items, and it was purely a buyer's market. He even monopolized the seller's market, earning at least 50% of the blood for this mysterious item. Proper profiteer. You win, change to the next one. Rumlow said with a dark face, pushed the knife to the opposite side and replaced it with a silver white cup. Discover mysterious energy, strength, 20 inches. Poor baby. Locke calmly put the knife on his right hand. He continued to keep a straight face, maintaining the impatient character, holding a crystal ball, repeating the old tricks. This time it is a larger number, 4, than before. Locke raised his eyebrows slightly, showing a hint of surprise just right, and then quickly retracted. Rumlow's expression looks a little better this time, and his face is not so dark. Not bad. Pushing the cup over again, it was finally the silver white saucer's turn. After the first 2 bases, Rumlow subconsciously thought that this one was also a mysterious item. However, after a long time, no number appeared on the crystal ball, and he felt a little bit in his heart. Sure enough, Locke twitched his mouth and pushed it mercilessly. The plate fell off the table and shattered into pieces. Crack, trash, putting it here dirty my eyes. Rumlow. You, I am me, you are you. If you want it, you can pretend it and take it back, I don't mind. Lark stood up and put the crystal ball back into the cabinet, looking so arrogant that Rumlow was so angry that he wanted to punch him. Countless silver-white ceramic fragments were scattered on the ground, and the cracks of different shapes reflected the glowing glow. They were energy-saving lamps hanging on the head of the hall. Rumlow obviously didn't believe Lark, bent down to pick up the biggest pieces, put them in the box, and change the password once. Pretty cautious. Locke put down the crystal ball and picked up the card next to it. Winston already told you when we were at the door that today's points can only be purchased at a 50% discount. Locke Yong said the card and sat down in his seat. 50% off. Hold it, it's the bureau that's losing, not me. Rumlow took 2 deep breaths, stabilized his mind, and squeezed out an ugly smile. It is good. That's fine. Lark handed over the card, and Rumlow took it excitedly. Just as he turned to the front to see the content on it, he couldn't help taking a deep breath. Suck. You are too stupid, isn't this price really aimed at me? Product name. Essence of Life 100 ml, price 3 points crossed out points bottle, each faction can only redeem 1 bottle per month. Long Yin Long Knife, priced at 100 points, this is the only one, don't miss it. Rumlow broke the defense, really worthy of the surname Stark, business talents and skills are full. The purchase price was reduced by 50%, and the points were discounted by 50% for no reason. Now the 3 mysterious items are only enough to exchange for a bottle of life essence. Good for you. It would be really disrespectful of you not to join Hydra. After secretly noting down the price of the Longyan Long Saber, Rumlow held his nose in exchange for a bottle of life essence and walked away despondently. If he doesn't leave, he is afraid that he won't be able to pay for the drinks later. Although he didn't drink. After confirming that Rumlow had left the hotel, Luck raised his fingers, and a piece of silver-white ceramic the size of a thumb appeared in his hand. Discover mysterious energy. Strength, 50 inches. How can the guy holding the meal have no energy? Mysterious items can be roughly divided into two categories based on their origins. 1. When the devil from another dimension invaded the earth, a certain item was contaminated with its power. Over time, it naturally acquired strange abilities. However, this kind is relatively rare, and most of them were sealed or destroyed by the mages of Karmatage. People with special abilities and items that have been used for a long time. The three-piece cup set in front of me belongs to this column. In addition, if anyone's personal item in the comics contains the most energy, it must be the teacup of Master Ji Yi. Not counting the fan, it must be a magic weapon. In 500 years, even a pig can take off. Lark put the three-piece suit into the box, told Winston not to disturb him, left the auction hall and returned to the room. Since the energy value of the table knife and cup is not enough to reach 50 points, they cannot meet the standard of body strengthening, so they are directly absorbed. I exchanged a few birds in the past 2 days, turned on the energy detector, and the balance was only 75. With this replenishment, I finally broke through 135 again, reaching energy value. In the bathroom, Lark caught the fragment between his fingers. There was no ice water in the bathtub. His extraordinary instinct told him that he could bear it. Whether to spend 50 energy points, match with mysterious items, and open physical body enhancement. The note disappeared. Yes, the ceramic fragments cracked and turned into dust all over the sky, drifting into the gemstones. No heat flow. There is no light. In the body, the dragon force that was originally running like a tortoise suddenly accelerated, like a clockwork machine, spinning crazily, and condensed a drop of golden yellow liquid in an instant. Boo! Lark's body trembled, and his control of power went up to a higher level. Body strengthening becomes accelerating the condensation of dragon power. Rucker couldn't wait to put on his clothes, and took the elevator to the rooftop to find Winston. Within 2 days, S.H.I.E.L.D. sent him 3 mysterious items, 20, 40, and 50, totaling 110 energy points. While proving that they are indeed in stock, it also shows that the auction has made the right move. The efficiency crushed him when he was driving around New York alone. Going up to the rooftop, Winston was in high spirits and was playing chess with an old man. The hair is black, the wrinkles on the face have faded, the whole person looks a lot younger, and the suit is also casual and relaxed. Seeing Lark, the old man quickly stood up and bent down. Mr. Stark, High Table Messenger Felix Eswold sends you his greetings. Reaching out without hitting the smiling face, Lark shook hands politely, and Winston gestured for a bottle behind him. Lark instantly understood that it was also for the Kiel water. After sitting down, the old man quickly explained the purpose of coming. A certain boss of the Russian high table is old and his physical condition has declined rapidly recently. He sought medical treatment to no avail, and was prepared for the funeral, but suddenly heard that there was a magical potion in lock that could delay life. Regardless of the 1-month period, he immediately sent an envoy to exchange for 2 bottles of life essence. To this end, 2 large boxes of various strange and bizarre objects were collected, flown over, and placed on the rooftop. After the envoy finished speaking, he looked at Locke anxiously, his fingernails stuck in his palm due to nervousness. Locke lowered his head in thought, tapping his fingers rhythmically on the solid wood tabletop, making a beep sound. He underestimated the allure of the essence of life to ordinary people. In life, there are 2 things we fear most, one is poverty, and the other is injury. This group of people has struggled for decades and successfully escaped the shadow of poverty. Naturally, they want to enjoy this colorful world and wish they could live until the end of the world. Suddenly heard that there is something that can delay the disease, and then live happily for a few more years, so naturally you have to seize it. With the first, there will be the second, and with the first, there will be the second. If the restrictions are not increased, people who seek medicine in the future will be able to step through the hotel gate. S.H.I.E.L.D., it's your turn. Hey, Mr. Eswold, it's really unfortunate that you came here. The life essence, created in the past 3 days has just been exchanged. Quote. Luck said, calling up the hotel surveillance camera to show him. In the screen, Rumlow was carrying 3 boxes when he entered the hotel, and only 1 was left when he left. Now we can only wait 3 days at the fastest for the next bottle of essence of life. That's it. The old man sighed and leaned back on the chair, obviously knowing in advance the production of a bottle for 3 days. After a while, the old man sat up straight, tidied up his clothes, expressed his willingness to wait, and then took people into the hotel. Seeing Winston greeting him, Lark asked curiously, "Do you know him?" Winston placed the chess pieces and said, "I've seen it a few times, so I'm not too familiar with it." Oh, Lark played first, and chess was one of the few literary and artistic skills in the predecessor, and finally there was no scum in the end. How is the collection of mysterious items by those rich people going? Auctions are now the main business of the hotel, and Labanlac attaches great importance to it. Winston is already familiar with this information, and he directly said. They set up many antique companies and began to collect goods based on the items given in the albums. So far, they have collected a large number. In addition, their respective gangs have also received orders to dispatch. New York has been very lively these 2 days. The leaks are growing well, and the old farmer Locke is very satisfied. During the conversation, Lark was killed and abandoned his armor. Seeing that he was about to be generalized, the wind blew, and he slapped the table with an ouch, and the chess pieces became a mess. Crack. There are bugs. Winston gave a thumbs up and sincerely praised, "Good palm." Lark knew how much he weighed, so he stopped humiliating himself with his chess skills. He changed the subject and asked, "Aren't they going to sue Shield? Why didn't I hear any movement?" That Scarface was still calm when he came. "I heard that it has been put on hold for now, and everyone is busy searching for mysterious items all over the world. It makes sense, venting your anger is not as important as your life." Chapter 51. The equipment arrived, and the arc reactor was born. With clean energy, Tony finally got rid of the crisis of palladium poisoning. The energy is 3 times more powerful than a nuclear reactor, which greatly enhances the endurance and combat capabilities of the armor. At the same time, Locke also told him about several types of battle armor in his memory. If it is made, it proves that Locke's thinking is correct, and all the credit is on him. If it can't be made, it can only prove that Tony has the name of a negative genius. Pull his hips. Neither the left nor the right will suffer, hee. Half a month later, Tony lived up to his heavy expectations and built a suitcase-style portable armor. The donkeys in the production team are not as fast as him. After preparations during this period, the general direction of the Stark Industrial Expo has been set, and invitations can be sent to the world only after the construction team completes the construction. All is ready except for the opportunity. One day, everyone was having dinner at the manor, and Tony slammed the steak on the plate, and Jarvis suddenly sent a message. "Boss, the official Moroccan F1 racing organization has sent an invitation and wants to invite you to attend the opening ceremony." What? Tony looked up. With a trace of sauce on his beard, he picked up a napkin and wiped his lips wonderingly. Why did they send me an invitation? I have never touched it before. Is someone trying to trick me again? Tony was instantly alert. With the lessons learned from the past few times, he took the lead in looking at his brother, narrowing his eyes slightly, raised the knife and fork in his right hand, and threatened. "It was you again, wasn't it? Oops, I'm a substitute." Lark put down his knife and fork with a sincere look, trying to clear himself of his grievances. "It's really not me this time." "Really?" Tony dragged out his voice, clearly not believing him. "Really?" Tony opened his eyes, focusing on every expression on his brother's face, trying to find evidence that he was lying. The expression is so sincere, it doesn't seem like he's lying. "No, I can't believe him." Tony moved the knife and fork, aiming at the fat figure who was busy cooking. "Happy, do you think he's lying? I've provoked someone." Happy's fat shuddered, and his innocent little eyes moved back and forth on the handsome faces of the 2 bosses. Lark didn't speak, but just stared at him quietly, and Tony didn't speak, just stared at him quietly. "Gudong." Happy decisively threw away his knife and fork, snatched away the half-meat plate from Abao in his confused eyes, and ran into the kitchen. "Ha ha, I'm full, you 2 big brothers. Hey, Abao ate so fast today, I'll fry another steak for him." "Abao. Hey, you even dare to snatch my flesh, take your life." "Ow, Bao, what are you doing?" "Oh, Brother Bao." Speak up if you have something to say, don't stretch your claws. Brother bow. Brother bow. Rucker and Pepper turned to look at him simultaneously. Ahem, let's eat and eat. Tony, the person at the scene, dropped his hands in embarrassment and continued to deal with the steak. Lark wiped his mouth and asked, Jarvis, is there just one text message? Is there anything else? In the original book, Tony chose to go racing in Morocco because he was running out of time and wanted to go crazy one last time, and then encountered a series of events. Now that his brother is awake and sarcastic about him every day, the girlfriend tortures him in various ways, and the palladium poisoning has been solved, Lark can't think of any reason for Tony to participate. Wait, there seems to be a reason. Boss, there is a poster sent with the text message. Jarvis brings up the poster. 4 racing babes with flaming red lips and hot clothes, holding helmets, flags and other props in their hands, are doing provocative movements, almost occupying the entire poster, while the background is a bird's-eye view of the non-existent arena. Director, add chicken legs to this designer. Tony blurted out, aren't these 4 beauties? Lark blurted out, aren't these the 4 little thieves? You two know each other. Pepper stopped and looked at the two with strange eyes. I know you, and I've been lucky enough to meet you twice. It's nice to have beautiful people and sweet songs. Locke put down his fork with a smile, picked up a piece of green fruit and put it on Pepper's plate, and frowned at her. Right, Tony. Anyway, I'm a bachelor, and it's only natural to see beautiful women. Old God Locke is interrogating him with Pepper with stern eyes. It's a pity that Tony really didn't plan to do anything this time. He directly called out the scene of the drag racing that day, the robber throwing money and not catching up later. As for Morocco, Lark made the decision on the spot. Go with. I sent an email back to the Moroccan official. The next day, the two split into 2 groups. Tony was in charge of acting as a tool man, recreating 2 armors and small toys, and he flew back to the hotel. Winston happened to be basking in the sun on the roof. Lark handed over the information collected by Jarvis and ordered, send a few people to Russia to keep an eye on the person in the photo. After he leaves, destroy everything he left behind. Do you understand? Clear. Send 2 more messages to Ems Hill, telling her that I would like to invite her to travel to Morocco sometime later and asking her if she agrees. Ming, understand. Shield sent someone to monitor him, and the hotel's intelligence system had discovered it a long time ago, but the other party was very polite, so he didn't care too much. There is no gold treasure in the world, but there are still tens of thousands of silver and copper treasures. In the same way, when we go to Morocco, Shield will definitely send someone to follow us. Instead of being spied on by a group of rough guys, we might as well call the iceberg Beauty Hill. At least eye-catching. By the way, they can also be used to block a lot of unnecessary troubles. Toolman Hill, Stone Hammer. There will be a lot of people going that day, and Tony and the others usually need to use it, so Lark temporarily added 1 and asked Shield to send 2 more Quinjets. Money. You can open it as you like. Still the secret chat channel. No. 1. Just now Lark invited my people to visit Morocco. It seems that your plan was successful. Number 4. Well, I've got people to start promoting it. No. 3 Quinjet fighter jets, plus armor and Jaguar, the strength should not be underestimated. Do you need my help? Number 4. No, those equipments are like lumps of iron in front of it. Number 1. In the dark room, empty wine bottles and cigarette butts were thrown away randomly, and the air was filled with a bad smell. The unshaven old man leaned on the bed, grabbed his son by the collar, pointed at the TV, and roared unwillingly. The Stark family is a bunch of thieves. Go and get back everything that belongs to you, that is your glory. After speaking, the old man rolled his eyes, and it was gone. The bearded man pushed his hands away expressionlessly, sat on the simple single bed, held the remote control in his hand, and switched channels one by one. The first one was when Tony returned from Afghanistan and Stark collected more than 70% of his shares, causing a worldwide sensation. The second news is the scene of Stark's mobile phone conference. Tony descended from the sky in armor and announced that he was Iron Man. There was a mountain of applause below. The third, the fourth, the fifth is half a year after the launch of Stark's mobile phone, Tony successfully became the richest man in the world. Sixth, hello, viewers, welcome to the official report from the Moroccan F1 race. Recently, the famous world's richest man, Mr. Tony Stark, will come to attend the opening ceremony of this race. I heard. Pat, the TV is turned off, taking away the last ray of light in the room. The Principality of Monaco, referred to as Monaco, is a city-state located in southwestern Europe, surrounded by France on 3 sides and bordered by the Mediterranean Sea on the south. With a land area of only 2.08 square kilometers, it is mainly engaged in tourism, banking, insurance, etc., among which the Formula 1 Grand Prix, referred to as F1, is the most famous. F1 is about to start, attracting racing enthusiasts from all over the world. Little Monaco enters the red ocean. Red t-shirts, red flags, even the advertisements played on the big screen are also red. With the arrival of a large number of tourists, the rooms of major hotels are already full, and many people have to find homestays. This year is even more exaggerated. After F1 officially released the news that the world's richest man, Mr. Tony Stark, will attend the opening ceremony, the entire Monaco is almost packed. Friday, September 9th, 2 days before the opening ceremony. Horse Park Hotel, the only 5-star hotel in Monaco, is located on the mountainside and has a beautiful private garden. Ding! The log-colored door opened, and a dozen employees wearing cleaning uniforms walked into the hotel, followed by a blond man wearing a manager's logo on his chest. After entering the hall, he couldn't wait to pick up the intercom. The distinguished guest will be here soon. Everyone immediately enters the room to check it again, especially the presidential suite. No corner is allowed. Everything must be new. There must be no items in the room. A trace of dust. Go, go, go. The employees dispersed in a swarm, and each entered the assigned room. 9:53, 9:54, 9:55. 3 minutes passed, and there was still no movement in the room. The manager paced back and forth in the hall, raising his watch from time to time. At this time, a shadow floated under the window. The manager looked up, and a strangely shaped plane with Stark 1 written in gold and red letters slowly lowered its altitude. The distinguished guest is here. The manager hurriedly asked everyone to evacuate the room. He pushed open the door and ran to the tarmac. The green grass is now full of people. The leader is the chairman of the hotel, and next to him are the major shareholders, Monaco officials, and various investors who host the F1 race. The manager walked through the crowd, stood behind his boss, and joined him to greet the big man. This plane is so powerful that there is no engine sound at all at such a close distance. Yeah, and he flies faster than a helicopter. He is worthy of being the Iron Man who made the armor. Yeah, I really want to buy one too. When the plane landed, a group of people immediately went up to meet it, but they didn't expect that the first ones to come out were not people. A Bao stepped out of the cabin door first with mighty steps, raised his head high, and looked at the civil and military officials below, showing his domineering aura. This is a pet. Everyone stopped and looked at the sudden appearance of the jaguar with shocked expressions. Bao nodded slightly in a very humane way, as if he was satisfied with their reaction. He let out a long cry. Hey, my stupid people, hurry up and welcome. Before the great journey started, it was interrupted by a ruthless man. Locke raised his hand and rewarded him with a big chestnut. Abao, hurry up, there are still many people behind. Roar, ow. Abao was dissatisfied and threw his head and jumped out of the hatch, and hit Locke on the leg with his tail. This brat. Locke rubbed his leg, ready to hold it in his arms at night and teach him a good lesson. What kind of pet is what kind of owner? Seeing him walking on the hanging ladder, Bao blinked his big eyes and let out a wow. In the plane, the harem group received a call from their lover, and jumped out of the plane one after another. Everyone. When the leopard was passing by, its tail floated uncontrollably on someone's lap. Clap, clap, clap. These brats. I want to eat fried pork with bamboo shoots tonight. Snort. With outsiders around, Locke couldn't use Dewey Tianlong, so he gave it a vicious look, and let them go mercifully. Haha, I'm sorry everyone, the little guy has been a little naughty lately. Lark greeted with a smile. It is normal for rich people to keep some lions, tigers, and leopards as pets. Everyone present has seen the world, and no one is surprised. Everyone quickly offered flattery. Such words as mighty, smart, well-behaved, cute, etc. all came out. A group of ground turtles. They don't even know the name of this animal, Shadow Panther, so they're just talking nonsense here. I really don't know which pheasant university you graduated from. Mouth King Tony made his debut. He stood at the door of the cabin, his black sunglasses raised slightly, and he only pointed his big nostrils at people. Sweeping his nostrils. The race car official, didn't they say that it would be good to welcome me, the world's richest man, at the hotel? Why don't I see anyone now, and I have no sincerity at all? So arrogant, well defiant, I really want to hit him. The veins on the foreheads of everyone burst out. How can you see it when you raise your head? A green-haired man with green pupils stood on tiptoe, waved his hands and shouted. Mr. Stark, below, I'm below. This scene seems to be the mistress who saw her husband come home. Everyone silently moved away from him. The pretense failed. Tony didn't blush or breath, he replied lightly, oh, and walked down the hanging ladder. Behind Pepper led Hill, Happy and Haytham each carried a suitcase. Winston was entrusted with an important task, temporarily serving as the vice president of the Stark Group, responsible for guarding the house. Otherwise, after a group of people have been playing for a few days and then go back and find that their home has been stolen, that would be ridiculous. After Pepper came down, he naturally took the right to speak from the two useless men and exchanged business with a group of people. During the conversation, everyone walked along the path and entered the hotel. From start to finish, the other Quinjet never opened. After exchanging a few pleasantries and becoming familiar with each other, the group of people turned around and left. There are still 2 days left before the opening ceremony. No matter what you want to do, whether you want to attract investment or not, there are plenty of opportunities and there is no rush. With Hill around, Lark didn't show the storage space, and the luggage was carried by Haytham's men. After the things were put down, Haytham opened the luggage, took out the equipment from inside, and led the people to check the room for bugging equipment. Stark Group used to dominate the military industry, and now Tony has developed a battle armor. It stands to reason that the owner of the hotel must not be so stupid, playing big swords in front of Guangdong, and humiliating himself. However, just to be on the safe side, check again and rest assured. There are still quite a lot of rooms on the entire floor, and it will take some time. Haytham gave priority to clearing out the presidential suite and let the boss live in it first. Intimate, suddenly coming to the new environment, Abao, as a territorial creature, happily led the 3,000 beauties of the harem around from room to room, with brisk and elegant steps. He didn't realize that a certain man clenched his fists behind him. Tony, what are we having for lunch? Dark clouds occupy the entire sky, gloomy, light rain pours down one after another, polluting the earth into blackness. In the dark and damp alley, orange-red fireworks flickered on and off. The temperature in Russia at the end of September was very low, and a gust of cold wind blew by. Anton subconsciously wrapped his clothes tightly. The rough collar rubbed red marks on his neck, but he didn't show any expression, but the sparks became brighter and brighter. After a while, there were footsteps coming from the dark alley. In the dark night, an invisible man stepped on the raindrops and handed him an envelope. His strange eyes flashed away. After the man left, Anton opened the envelope and checked the contents through the dim light from between the bricks. A passport, a ticket. After confirming that it was correct, Anton put the things in his arms, walked out of the alley and disappeared into the night. A few tens of meters away, 2 men in ordinary clothes came out from the corner and looked at the direction he left. He's going to the port, do you want to follow? No, the opening ceremony is about to start, it's too late if he doesn't leave, let's go to his residence. The two exchanged in low voices, checked their surroundings vigilantly, walked out of the alley, and started the ordinary Toyota on the side of the road. Braving the wind and rain, the two came to Anton's residence and followed the instructions given by above to destroy everything they saw, including a beautiful talking parrot. After the two left, the raging fire quickly engulfed the entire house, and the orange-yellow fire was particularly eye-catching in the forest. Brake. A pure black SUV stopped in the distance. 2 people wearing hoods whose faces could not be seen got out of the back seat. They observed the fireball and then returned to the car and disappeared into the forest. Ding. Boss, Anton set off by boat. The people below found these things in his house. They seem to be some kind of manufacturing blueprints. Do you want to send someone to land and get rid of him? No, I have my own way, you don't have to worry about it. Putting away the phone, Locke leaned back, leaned his head on the chair, and continued to enjoy the beautiful night view of the city. Hill sat in the driver's seat and acted as a driver, shuttling through the streets and alleys, his clear eyes shining with neon lights. He glanced at the co-pilot and said, "Is this what you call playing? Take me as the driver to run around in this kind of place in the middle of the night?" Locke's dead duck is stubborn, and his words are unreasonable. Ahem, how is that possible? Isn't it going to a strange place? You have to be familiar with the surrounding environment. Are you right? Same as your leopard. Quote. Just have a good chat and please don't make personal attacks. Hill turned the steering wheel left, turned into an alley with fewer people, and drove slowly. She still said coldly, "I'm just telling the truth." Locke couldn't hold back anymore. "I haven't seen him for a few days, why is Hill's mouth so powerful? It's a bit overwhelming." He sat up straight, looked forward, sighed, and looked very disappointed. "You will lose me as a friend like this." After driving for a while, there was a slight noise from both sides of the alley. Several black guys put on their hoods on the street, put their hands on their waists, and fell behind the car. When 3 or 5 people gathered and were ready to act, 2 black SUVs drove in and sandwiched them. The car window was lowered, and several heavily armed men in black suits stared at them without saying a word. After a full second, several black guys raised their hands in unison, tremblingly took off their hoods, revealing a pair of big white teeth. "Hello, have you eaten? Did God eat it? Where did this Chinese joke come from?" No one answered him. The alley was very quiet as a cemetery in the suburbs. It was frighteningly quiet. Visible to the naked eye, the legs of several black buddies began to tremble. After a while, when the men in black suits glanced at each other, they immediately picked up their legs and left dejectedly, as if they had been granted amnesty. The SUV is stealthy again. Hill looked away from the rearview mirror, turned the steering wheel right and drove onto the highway. There was a beach connecting to the port. Hill was about to get back the losses he had suffered before, and continued to spray like gunpowder in his mouth. "My friends don't take advantage of me every time we meet. A few months ago, billions of dollars were only exchanged for Natasha. The last auction was about Howard's relics, and this time I came to Morocco, and just now." Quote. Stop, 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 stop. Please don't say it, Master. I know I'm wrong, I know I'm wrong. Locke clasped his hands together and begged for mercy. Since when did your Bingshan beauty character turn into Tang Monk? You can't stop opening your mouth. Hill continued to talk to himself, and Locke couldn't take it anymore, pulled down the handbrake and pushed the door open. The breeze is blowing into the arms, the air is filled with a strong smell of seafood, and the calls of seabirds are heard from time to time. Cleaned up. Rucker slammed the car door shut, blocking out the last distraction, and headed down the beach. What he hates most is that other people think about him. The point is, what people say is true. It's embarrassing. After walking for a while, there was a sudden noise in front of them. More than a dozen people gathered in front of a small wooden house on the seaside, and from time to time they heard exclamations of surprise. Lark's first reaction was not what they were doing, but curious about how houses were allowed in this kind of place. Out of curiosity, Lark quickened his pace and planned to check out the situation. There was no way for the car to reach the cabin, so Hill could only pull over, and she planned to give full play to the good qualities of stalking. Wait for me. Unexpectedly, as soon as the words came out, the man's speed became faster, and his back became farther and farther away. A typical American old man with white hair and hooked nose stood in front of the wooden house, through the gate, pointed to the 2 unclosed rooms inside and said, "Everyone, today is the last day of the auction. The old rules still apply. For only $300, you can enter the last 2 rooms of this restaurant, and everything in it will be yours." Someone immediately retorted, "Old Wilson, just save yourself, as if we didn't know that these 2 rooms are utility rooms, and there is nothing in them." "Yes, your price is too expensive." Rucker stood behind the crowd and quickly figured out what they were doing. This used to be a seaside restaurant, but it had to be demolished because of the development and construction of the pier. The owner, Wilson, is too old and ready to return to China, but he has too many things and he doesn't want to sort them out, so he sets a price for each room and sells it according to the way of storage and treasure hunting. The novel way of playing attracted a lot of people, plus they were all old customers, who probably knew what the room was for and what was in it. All the profitable rooms have been sold out, and now only the last 2 rooms are left unoccupied. $300, do you really want me to take it? Locke raised his hand and asked. Seeing that he was a familiar fellow countryman, old Wilson perked up. He patted his chest and said sincerely, Federal people do not lie to Federal people. Rucker. Okay, I want both. Lark quickly took out his mobile phone and was about to scan the QR code to transfer money when a delicate hand blocked the camera. I want one too. My sister, why are you still lingering? Lark felt that his brain hurt, so he had to give one to her. And make a bet with her, if the value of what Luke finds out is higher than her, then today, at least before she returns to New York, she will not be able to transform into Tang Monk again, otherwise, Luke will lose a bottle of life essence to her. This bet is not bad in any way, and Hill readily agreed. After paying the money and receiving gloves, masks and other equipment from old Wilson, she walked into the restaurant immediately and chose the room on the far left. Call. It finally stopped. Lark let out a long sigh of relief. Fickle women are really scary. Shaking his head to dispel the weird feeling in his heart, Lark also received the equipment and walked into the room. In everyone's eyes, they looked like a young couple quarreling. A Mediterranean stroked his head and said with emotion, It's good to be young. I think I was as handsome as this young man back then, and he was known as the Little Plum of Monaco. His arrogant appearance soon attracted collective ridicule. Everyone who came to the restaurant was all old acquaintances, and no one knew about the embarrassing things between them. Now that they found an opportunity, everyone started to attack. But let's put it down, who changed 4 bicycles a year, and finally had no choice but to take the bus instead. Yes, I remember this too. He wanted me to take him when his car broke down, just kidding. And also, the Mediterranean was quickly defeated and left in shame. When they left, they put down their harsh words and waited for me. It's noisy outside, but it's quiet inside. The room is not big, only about 10 square meters. There is a musty smell in the air, and cobwebs can be seen everywhere in the corners. The sanitary environment is very bad. It seems that old Wilson was not lying. This restaurant has indeed been closed for a long time. The sundries and sundries are piled up together, leaving only a small gap in the middle, and there is no room for people to turn around. At this time, there was a clear "shet" from the next door, and Lark guessed that the room should be similar to this one. Retribution, who told you to insist on grabbing it from me? The room stinks so badly that Rucker decides to make a quick fix. He took out a small metal ball from the space and put it on the ground. When he pressed it, the red indicator light lit up, indicating that the ball was working. He held his breath, leaned sideways, and carefully squeezed into the gap, trying not to stain his clothes. After taking 2 steps like a crab, he stopped. Lark took out a clip from the space, reached into the pile of debris, and clipped a small black gadget. Be careful to avoid the legs of the tables, chairs and benches, and the gadget was successfully taken out. The mouth of the bowl is as thick as a fist, about 10 centimeters deep, with a thick layer of oily smoke sticking to the surface, and a faint red underneath. Probably some kind of mug made of wood. Lark didn't study carefully. He stretched out the clips one after another and picked out several identical gadgets from the pile of debris. In order to deceive others, he added a kettle and a saucer, which just happened to make up a set of tea sets. The next door was still ding-dong. Lark placed the things at the door, put one hand on the door, and asked in the tone of the boss. Dong-dong. Please ask our gold hunter Ms. Hill how the mission was completed. This room was even worse than next door, except damp, moldy, and cobwebs. There were several dead rats in the corner. Hill was dressed as a man, with a dark blue striped suit and a pair of light brown leather shoes. Her cool demeanor made her look so dirty. Hair, shoulders, cuffs, shoe uppers, all dusty. It will be ready soon. She closed her eyes and stood on her toes, groping for a while in the pile of debris above her head, and the blue mask stuck to her face. After a while, he hooked 2 fingers around a small ring and gently pulled it out. After taking it off, the gloves wipe off the dust on the surface, and it is a small cup full of European style, used for drinking afternoon tea. Hill raised his head, glanced at Luck's feet, then bent down to pick up the 2 cups on the ground and walked out of the room. That's it. Wearing a mask, Lark couldn't see her expression, but judging from her voice, she seemed very happy. Wilson stood guard outside the door, looking at the pitiful 2 or 3 items in their hands, and couldn't help but wondered, you two don't want to choose any more. There are a lot of good things in there, and it's no problem to sell them for $800 or $900. No, we're just trying to make something fresh, and we'll be fine with these 2 items. Correct. They didn't pay attention just now, but now that the 2 of them were standing under the light, everyone realized that the suits they were wearing were all high-end goods. It is the kind that they have struggled for a year, and it is estimated that they can only afford half of their sleeves. Now that the F1 race is about to be held, they should be the tourists attracted. After the selection is completed, the transaction will end here according to the normal process, and everyone will go back to each house. Now they both stood in front of him with a plate, with no intention of leaving. Wilson was a little confused and asked tentatively, "What other instructions do you two have?" Luck briefly explained the bet, mainly asking Wilson to help evaluate the prices of things on both sides and determine the winner or loser. Such an interesting thing. Before he finished speaking, Wilson agreed directly, pulled up a bench, placed it under the light, and began to act as an appraiser. As expected, Lark lost. With that European-style cup, Hill managed to win a bottle of Essence of Life. With the winner decided, Luck and Wilson shook hands, put the cups in plastic bags and left the restaurant. Hill quickly followed, not letting the bottle of water escape. Back at the hotel, Luck couldn't wait to kill Hill with a bottle of water, and immediately collapsed on the sofa, enjoying the wonderful chirping of insects outside the window. The black cup was placed on the table, and even the bright lights in the room could not penetrate it, and there were dark oil stains on the surface. At this time, the roar of the leopard came from outside the window, which sounded very happy. Lark opened the floor-to-ceiling windows, and there was a full moon hanging high in the sky. The bright moonlight shone down, and 4 silver-white figures were playing back and forth on the hillside. Among them, Abao and Damao are the happiest. They have been staying in the hotel for a long time, and the rooftop is not enough to have fun. Now they can seize the opportunity to play wild. From time to time, he suddenly appeared, startling the black suits around him. This hotel has been booked by Lark, and there are no outsiders. There are extra planes, so let them go back for more fun in the future. Lark was about to close the door when deafening rock music came from the sky, and Stark number 1 landed on the lawn. Before the hatch was opened, Yin Yang Yanyan's voice had already reached Lark's ears. "Don't think about it, it must be Tony." Sure enough, in the next second, 4 gorgeously dressed beauties with various styles got off the plane with their arms around Tony, who was drowsy. "Oh, Mr. Stark, you are so annoying. Stark, are you really willing to let me try your armor? What if it breaks? I can't afford it." A person leaned against him, twirling his slender fingers on Tony's chest, and the arc reactor glowed with fluorescence. When passing by Locke, the dazed Tony raised his head slightly, exchanged a glance with him, then continued to pretend to be dizzy, and was carried into the room by 4 people. Happy followed with a suitcase, and stood guard outside the door. Abao is having fun with 3,000 beauties, Tony is having fun with 4 beauties, Locke is watching the moon alone, we all have passionate nights. Early morning. A dark cloud floats in the sky, blocking the moonlight. The breeze gradually picked up, bringing wisps of mist. The gray-white gas rides the wind from the foot of the mountain, crosses the forest and the sea of flowers, and soon reaches the sky above the hotel. The moonlight became thinner, and the vision was hazy. Such a strange situation naturally attracted the attention of the security team. All the men in black suits pulled out their pistols and turned on the flashlight with their left hands. The bright lights glanced back and forth around them. Haleson's steady voice came from the headset. Everyone should be more vigilant and maintain communication. 1 groups received. 4 groups received. After a while, the headset rang again. At the top of the mountain, how far is the coverage of the heavy fog? Halesham is very cautious. He knows that there are many things in this world that cannot be explained by science. Especially after changing to a new boss, this phenomenon has become more frequent. On the top of the mountain, a patch of grass was opened, and 2 men in camouflage uniforms were lying on the ground. After receiving the instruction, the one holding the telescope on the left stood up and looked around. "ZZ, report, the fog is still drifting up from the foot of the mountain, and it is expected to cover the entire mountain peak. Where's the surrounding area? The moon is obscured and cannot be seen clearly. I know, keep hiding. After hanging up the communication, the two men in camouflage uniforms did not stay in their original positions. They put away their equipment and changed to a secret position. In the monitoring room, Halson pinched the walkie-talkie and moved his eyes back and forth on the wall. Dozens of monitors cut the hotel into several areas. At this moment, the people brought out from the Continental Hotel are checking back and forth and reporting every 3 minutes. After a few minutes, no abnormalities were found, and Halsham ordered everyone to return to their original positions and remain alert. After thinking for a while, he still didn't notify Locke. Maybe it was just an ordinary fog. The hazy moonlight shines into the living room through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and 4 black cups lie quietly on the small table. Wisps of mist squeezed in through the gaps in the doors and windows, drifted and landed on the cup, and the black substance on the surface flickered. Immediately, the cup seemed to open its invisible mouth, swallowing the mist like a whale, and the off-white gas formed a miniature tornado in the living room. As more and more gas was absorbed, the cup emitted a strange light. After a while, a low burp came from the living room. The fog dissipated, exited the room, and continued to float in the sky and earth. The black substance, like chocolate melted at high temperature, fell off the cup and quickly piled up on the table. When the last drop melted, the black substance seemed to have life, turning into fluid and wandering on the table, all the way down the table legs. It wandered around the sofa, and then moved in a certain direction, passed through the dining table, floor lamp, cabinet, and came to a door in fluid. The watery body easily entered the room through the crack in the door. Through the faint light of the electrical indicator light, a blond man could be seen lying on the bed. A slight snore sounded in the house. Who? The calm surface of the fluid rippled, and then began to boil. The volume expanded rapidly in a very unscientific way, and soon became as tall as a person. No limbs, no facial features. It carefully walked to the bed, and the liquid surged into the air to form a giant mouth, slowly wrapping the man on the bed. But the man didn't seem to notice it at all, and still slept soundly. Feet, calves, thighs, belly, chest, just the last head it can eat a man. Gia. Saliva falls in the air. The man suddenly opened his eyes, and the gorgeous golden light enveloped the room. What? The moment it came into contact with it, it let out a human-like howl, and the ice and snow on its body melted, and soon it was only the size of a thumb. Before it had time to think about what happened, it slapped to the ground and began to flee crazily. Shua got out of the crack of the door, trying to rely on the door to block it for a while, but the man seemed like a peerless beast, kicked the door away and embedded it on the wall. The poor wooden door couldn't hold on for even a second. Boom! It continued to escape, relying on its size advantage to pick out all kinds of sundries to drill under, and quickly escaped from the living room. Luck had a lot of strength behind him, but Nahi was too small and couldn't catch it at all. A scream brought the hotel to life, the lights turned on one after another, and the sleeping people got up from the bed. The guards outside ran away and ran back. Of course, who is the fastest? It is of course Abao and the 4 of them. I saw 4 black figures rushing down the hillside, waving their 4 hooves lightly on the ground, passing the guards in 2 breaths, and rushing into the hotel in 3 breaths. Roar! X4. In the long corridor, 4 shadow Black Panthers stood in front. Lark stood at the end with a golden hand, and the fugitive, Black Water Drop, was blocked in the middle. There are solid walls on both sides, and there is no door crack for him to drill through. Locke opened his hands, and the strong dragon power formed a wall on the ground. Run! Why don't you run? Ah, I didn't say that. Locke turned around. I saw Tony walking from next door wearing a battle armor, with his visor open, and a very arrogant look on his face, as if he was the one chasing Water Drop all over the street. It's so useless for such a little thing to make you panic like this. Let me do it. With a wave of his hand, he pushed Lark to the side, then stepped forward, and stood outside the golden wall. He is not stupid, and of course he will focus on stability when facing unknown creatures. Usually, this behavior also has a name, go. At this time, the guards outside also came in, and they removed a door and placed it in front of Abao. Boom. The road was completely blocked. Black water dripped back and forth in the middle of the corridor, and I didn't know what to do. After hearing that there was a living mysterious object, everyone immediately became energetic and ran to the corridor to stand on tiptoe to watch. Where it is, let me see. Well, that's the little black dot in the middle. So small. Was it the scream just now? Probably. Hey, look, it's moving. There were more and more people. Xiaoshuidi felt uneasy, and after 2 laps, Didi accelerated on the ground and went straight to the wooden door. The golden light just now was still vivid in my mind, but it couldn't beat that terrifying man. Persimmons should be picked softly. The water droplets were extremely fast and rushed several meters away in the blink of an eye. Just as they were about to rush under the wooden door, a red light flashed in the air, leaving a shallow crater. Puff! The water droplets exploded, and the black liquid scattered on the ground, and there was no reaction for a long time. Dead, Tony wondered, smoke coming from the laser emitter on his shoulder. Locke shook his head. When that thing was scurrying around the room just now, it separated its actions several times, dodged and then closed up again. Sure enough, as soon as the words fell, the water stains gathered towards the center like an octopus and recondensed into water droplets. Only then did the color fade a little to a dark gray. Even though he had no eyes, Tony felt that there was a gaze on the water droplet, and it fell directly on him. Full of malice. Lark. The water droplet did not stop and looked at each other for a moment before charging towards the wooden door again. This time it did not go in a straight line and swam quickly on the ground in an S shape. The fancy route is so dazzling that it is impossible to predict where it will go next. However, all this is simply child's play for Jarvis. Target locked. Launch. The water droplet jumped high, and just as it was about to fly over the wooden wall, a thickened energy pillar flew out. Zitza. Most of the water droplet's body directly vaporized, and a black dot the size of a needle tip bounced on a guard's face with the help of impact. Clap. The guard subconsciously stretched out his hand to wipe his face, and the black spots transferred to his palms. Curiously, he pressed and pulled with his 2 thumbs to form a thread. He raised his head excitedly, and said to Locke, "Boss, this thing is dead, pick it up." Before he finished speaking, his fingers stung, and when he lowered his head again, there were still black spots there. Not good. Lark clenched his hands, took the dragon power back into his body, and turned into lightning and ran straight to the opposite side. The energy scanner in sight extends from the guard's palm, to the arm, then to the brain. Not only did that guy not die, but he seemed to be back at home, at an extremely fast speed. A few tenths of a second passed, and Luck had just reached the middle of the corridor. The guard's body twitched, his head drooped as if lifeless, and his hands were drooped on his chest. Such a strange scene scared the people around them and quickly backed away, leaving a large area vacant. Only Abao and the other 4 did not leave. They stood in the corridor surrounding the guard, hunched over and tense, ready to strike at any time. Later, Tony also realized that something was wrong. The visor closed, and more laser emitters protruded from the shoulders. The next moment, the guard suddenly raised his head. His eyes were completely white without pupils, and his facial muscles were like stretched rubber balls, ferocious and terrifying. At this moment, Lark was almost there, his hands shining with golden light. It may be that the impression it left was too deep. It turned around and ran away without even saying a ruthless word. However, how could the 4 leopards let it leave after waiting for a long time? Abao and Big Cat stood on both sides of the corridor, and the other 2 leapt high, their sharp claws forming a wall of knives in the air. Cold light flickered. Under normal circumstances, it would be impossible to pass through this wall alive just by guarding the mortal body. However, the previous black spots are obviously not something that can be explained by common sense. I saw it squatting in the sprint, and then stretched its legs straight like springs, and the whole person took off on the spot, showing inhuman jumping ability. The sharp blade slid across the body, taking away the toe of the shoe. A trace of shock flashed across Abao's human face, and then he and the other 3 giants collided with Luck, pressing him under him. Tony stepped forward quickly and asked anxiously, "Luck, are you okay?" Everyone behind him also cared about him. "Boss, are you okay?" I'm fine. Luck's vague voice came from Leopard Mountain first, and then he stretched out a hand, groped around, patted his soft head and said, "You guys, get up quickly, you're suffocating me." The 4 guys stood up with a, "Ooh," and Abao stuck out his tongue and licked his face before leaving. Well, it was just now that it was pressing on Luke's head. Boom. At this point it just hit the ground. It rolled on the ground, stood up and continued to run wildly, its hands turned into 9 yin white bone claws, aiming at the weak points of the human body, and it was blood red for a moment. The corridor is too narrow to use it, and the boss's family members are standing opposite, so the guards can only draw out their daggers and engage in hand-to-hand combat. 2 men in black suits attacked simultaneously, one on the left and the other on the right. The man on the left held a knife in his right hand and aimed at its throat and swiped it in the air. The man on the left squatted down and tried to cut off its legs. It grabbed 2 daggers from nowhere, jumped forward, opened its arms and spun in the air, causing 2 blood flowers to bloom. The posture is very gorgeous. If this was a stage play, then he must be performing a waltz. Elegant. It seems to be familiar with this body. It picks up both hands, and the custom-made dagger produces a knife. For the first time, an expression appeared on the face, and the muscles of the mouth stretched to the sides. It must be trying to laugh. The guard was frightened, and backed away again and again. Ho ho, ho ho, I call you De Wei Tianlong. Locke sent justice from the sky, condensed a golden dragon in the air, and aimed at it to smash down. Hold head high. This time it was not so lucky. It was swallowed whole by the golden dragon and its 2 sharp blades fell to the ground. The golden dragon bombarded the ground unabated, creating a deep hole, and the whole hotel trembled. Boom. Energy value plus 50. Success is also a physical body, failure is also a physical body. Finally solved it. Locke sat down against the wall, the skin on his body was unhealthy red, and the fine sweat quickly wet his clothes. In order to ensure a one-time solution and not give it a chance to change its body, Locke can only use the power of the dragon at overload and use a big move. It turns out that being small is also an advantage. The corridors are riddled with holes from laser shots, corpses of guards, blood spattered on the walls, and deep pits left by the final blow. Halson rushed over and gathered people to clean up the scene. Everyone walked out of the hotel one after another and rested on the lawn. I don't know when the fog dissipated. Crunch, crunch. Tony sat down next to Lark in his armor, handed him a towel, looked at the corpses being carried out, and said, "What the hell is that?" After drinking 5 bottles of dragon bone water in a row, Lark finally recovered. He wiped the sweat from his body and shook his head. "I don't know, I haven't seen it before. He is also very strange, why this mysterious item is like this today. It can move freely, and it also has wisdom, and all kinds of performances seem to be alive." If he had known it would become like this, Locke would have absorbed it, or locked him up in a cage and studied it carefully. What a great experimental material. Pity. Lark put down the towel, tapped his armor with his hand, and asked, "Why are you still wearing it? Why don't you take it off?" Cough cough. Tony twisted his butt subconsciously. He looked around and quickly changed the topic. "This is more secure. By the way, have you noticed that Ms. Hill seems to have never appeared?" Lark suddenly raised his head and glanced around. "I really didn't see, Tang Monk. How can this be? As a member of S.H.I.E.L.D., she should be the most excited and rush to the front when this kind of situation occurs. Why is it that now that the matter is over, she is not seen? Jarvis, where is Hill?" "Boss, according to the monitoring, after Ms. Hill and you returned to the hotel, they stayed in the room and never came out." Locke and Tony glanced at each other. "It's broken." Boom. The door was kicked open, and Locke rushed into the room with people. There was a person lying on the off-white carpet. His right hand was stretched out and pointed in the direction of the floor-to-ceiling window, and his right shoe flew far away. The clothes are intact, and the body rises and falls with the breath. Still alive. Locke breathed a sigh of relief. After 2 pats on Hill, there was no response, so Locke had to have her put on a stretcher and sent for examination. Several others were in charge of surveying the site, focusing on the floor-to-ceiling windows. As a top agent, Hill's gestures before unconsciousness must have meant something. However, the result was unexpected. After inspection, the floor-to-ceiling windows were intact, and there were no signs of damage or intrusion. She was the only one in the room from beginning to end. This is clearly not possible. How could Hill be in a coma for no reason, and still make such obvious movements with his hands? It can only mean that the thing that sneaked into the room was very powerful, and she was knocked unconscious without the ability to fight back. That would be, who? Locke stood where Hill was lying on his stomach, his eyes looked in the direction of her fingers. Sofa, floor-to-ceiling windows, fence, moon, sky. At this time, Lark thought that the cup he bought had mutated, and he woke up to start killing. What about the coffee cup in Hill's hand? Lark looked back and forth in the living room, but couldn't find it. He checked from room to room and finally found a black suitcase in the bedroom, which looked a bit like the box used to hold 084 items. The energy scanner exchanged today will expire after the battle. Lark doesn't know if the cup is inside, so he can only open it to take a look. He carried the suitcase and walked out of the hotel, and at a glance he saw a man in armor holding 4 beauties in his arms, wildly showing off how brave he had just been. The 4 beauties are also very face-saving, screaming, exclaiming, etc. They don't want money to be sent up, and the flattery is very good. Pepper was contacting the hotel and had no time to worry about him. This pair of enemies, tisk tisk. Rucker held up the box and yelled, "Tony, come and help." The little brother called, and Tony crawled out of the gentle town with great will, and walked this way wearing a battle armor. "Why are you calling me, interrupting my life exchange with a beautiful woman? Do you know that this is an illegal act?" He kicked his foot on the lawn, and a piece of turf flew up and landed right under Locke's feet. "I want to hit you." Lark put the box on the steps, and there was only a display screen on it. "Open this and have a look, there should be a mysterious item inside." He added, "Bought from the same place as the mug in my living room." "Oh who?" Tony raised his eyebrows and became interested. "Interesting, you are being bullied." Lark had already told him the origin of the cup, and by the way, gave him the faded cup for research. "This kind of thing is rare." Locke curled his lips, a little depressed. In the past, he was the one who cheated others, but he didn't expect to overturn the car today and be set up by someone. Unwise. Cracking the code should not be too easy for Tony. He clasped it directly with his big hand, and the display screen was damaged, and then he pulled out 2 wires from it and connected them to the armor. In less than 2 seconds, the box opened. Click. It was too simple, so that there was no sense of accomplishment at all. Tony sat down against the steps. After a while, he stood up and hid behind Locke. Locke turned the box to face himself. The dragon's power gathered in his hands and legs, his body bent slightly, and he was ready to run away at any time. Often when you are fully prepared to do a big thing, it usually doesn't happen. The box was opened and nothing happened. A pit was dug out in the middle of the black pearl foam, the cup rim was inlaid with gold wire, and a coffee cup with light clouds painted around it lay in the middle. A crack runs through the cup body from top to bottom. Cracked. If it was just suspicion before, now it is certain that there is someone behind what happened tonight. Tony chuckled. Unexpectedly, our Mr. Lark Stark will also be cheated one day. How about it? Do you want me to ask Jarvis to help you find out who the owner of the restaurant is? Seeing that it was safe, Tony went back to the steps, raised his legs, tiptoed. I really enjoy the feeling of mocking my brother. Worried about Lark. Joke. He only hoped that the other party could persist for a longer time, otherwise it would be over before it even started. That would be so boring. Rucker left the cup with his hands, closed the box, and sat on the steps following Tony's example, stopped a guard, and said, "Call Hatham and the person in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. In addition to Hill, there is also a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. who serves as her liaison." "Okay, boss." The guard stood up and responded, then turned and left. Hatham, who received the news after a while, rushed over, with his head down, his eyes dodging, not daring to look directly into Lark's eyes. "Boss, what are your orders?" He is in charge of the security of the hotel. Now that there is such a big mistake, he is ashamed of his trust in the boss. Locke is not blind. You can tell what he is thinking from this expression. He patted him on the shoulder and comforted him. "I don't blame you for what happened tonight. I brought that thing in myself, and the responsibility lies with me. In addition, the family of the brother who died tonight will be settled. Stark will not be short of the money, understand?" "Thank you, boss, I will inform you." "Well, I can rest assured that you are doing the work." During the conversation, a beauty with chestnut hair ran up from the foot of the mountain, her black leather shoes clicking on the ground. Like Hill, men dress up. Mr. Stark, what are your orders? Locke nodded, and asked her first, how is Hill, and has the test result come out? The maroon beauty took a deep breath. It was still a long way from the foot of the mountain. The doctor said she just passed out and she should be fine after a nap. That's good. Lurk nodded without thinking too much, took out a tablet and handed it to her. Haytham had it himself. Jarvis, send them the photo of the restaurant owner. Also, don't leave out the people present at the auction. Received, the message has been sent. Ding. An old man with gray hair and a very friendly smile appeared on the tablet of the two of them. Below it was a shortcut writing about how Locke and Hill met that restaurant and what they bought. Locke sternly said, find him. When fighting, don't play heads up. If you can stand shoulder to shoulder, put all your troops together and get it done. Understand. Understand. Haytham returned to the monitoring room and started calling Winston, asking him to contact the French branch of the Hotel Continental. Monaco is too small to have a branch, so we can only contact France next door. Lark holds the essence of life, and there are many people on the high table fawning over him. The maroon beauty ran all the way back to the foot of the mountain with the tablet, and walked into a small clinic, which was one of the safe houses of S.H.I.E.L.D. here. Not anymore. Entering the second floor, Hill was sitting on a chair soberly, without looking comatose. Seeing the tablet in the maroon beauty's hand, she calmly said, did Lark ask you to find the restaurant owner? The maroon beauty was surprised and replied, yes, let's look for it. Hill nodded. In fact, he had already sent Fury a message, and the call should come right away. Jingle bell. Sure enough, as soon as the words were finished, the mobile phone rang. Seeing this, the maroon beauty left the room and closed the door. The call was connected, and Fury's black face appeared on the screen. His black windbreaker could not cover the wheelchair behind him. He asked solemnly, Commander Hill, is what you said in the text message true? Hill said seriously, I'm sure I saw it right. The moment the coffee cup shattered, a stream of white gas floated out of the window. Although I fainted, Hill added in his heart. Okay, I'll figure out where the cup came from. Natasha will bring someone over to support you later. Make sure you don't miss this clue. Except for Locke's golden knife, this was the closest they were to a mysterious item, so naturally they couldn't let it go. If it wasn't for Locke over there, he would definitely lead the team there himself. Clear. In this way, with Lark's order, the two large organizations were mobilized. I believe that from tomorrow night until Lark leaves, the law and order situation in Monaco will be better than ever. The scavengers of the Continental Hotel deserve to be the most professional cleaning team. In just half an hour, they not only packed up the corpse, but also cleaned up all the blood, and replaced it with a brand new carpet. Guaranteed that the most professional identification team has come, and they can only analyze the ingredients of the cleaning agent from it, and there is no way to find a single DNA molecule. The hole is a bit crude, just throw some soil in. Anyway, just make sure it's not broken before leaving. Pepper contacted the hotel to no avail, so he had to settle for 2 more nights. Fortunately, everyone who came out this time had seen blood. Everyone took a shower, changed clothes, and slept as usual. There is no resistance. Lark came out of the bathroom and just sat on the sofa when Jarvis released the projection, and a motorcade was coming from the foot of the mountain. Boss, the chairman of the hotel is here. Oh, Luck glanced at the time. 1 hour, a bit slow. Locke wiped dry and threw away the towel, confidently shook his hair, and went out in a bathrobe. Passing through the corridor, and just walking to the corner, through a thick wall, you can hear the voices of Tony and Sime. Mr. Stark, please slow down, I can't stand it anymore. No, we're still waiting. Get down quickly. Yes, you've been playing for so long, it's our turn. Tony, don't worry, there is plenty of time tonight, everyone come one by one. Lark's hands froze in midair, and when he heard that he was interrupted midway, he would. Forget it, it's not me anyway, the worst I can do is give him 2 more bottles of dragon bone water, perfect. Lark shrugged his shoulders, knocked on the door with peace of mind, and shouted with the loudest voice. Open the door, the hotel will send you warmth. Boom. Ouch. Shet. Click. Tony opened the door angrily, His bathrobe half opened, revealing the blue and white arc reactor. You brat, can you please lower your voice? Why are you yelling outside? He poked his head out to take a quick look at the corridor, and then dragged him into the room amid Locke's bewildered eyes. Locke shook his head frantically. I don't want it, hello. Boom. Warm yellow lighting, light red sofa, leather clothing and leather pants props. There was a gaming motorcycle in front of the huge TV, and a girl in a short skirt was sitting on it, tilting left and right, and the sound of the rumbling engine came from the speakers. 3 beauties sat in a row, shouting frantically at the back that there was an oil leak, but no one noticed when they came in. So you guys are playing this? Locke muttered in a low voice, seemingly regretful. Tony's head is full of questions. I always feel that you are thinking about something unhealthy. He snapped a bottle of drink and slapped it on Locke's chest. He kept his eyes on the front, and didn't know whether he was watching TV or something. Tell me what's up. I'm busy. Busy playing games. Yes, I want to practice my skills well, and I will show you some color in the arena the day after tomorrow. Well, I've seen it. Rucker looked away from a piece of delicacy. Men are all naive ghosts, 9 out of 10 like mechas, and 1 likes racing cars. Coincidentally, Lark likes them all, and what's even more coincidental is that he is extremely rich now. So he spent $20 million angrily and signed up for the competition with Tony. On a side note, racing drivers are really worth their money. How can you improve your gaming skills? Lark couldn't help but put his arm around his shoulders and opened the door. Come on, come out with me. Hey, let me go. It doesn't matter if there are 2 big men hugging each other. Let go. Tony struggled with all his might, but failed to get rid of the embrace of the big devil, and was dragged out of the room. The feet scraped 2 long marks on the carpet. After walking out of the room, Lark immediately let go of his hand and tidied up his bathrobe very considerately. Men with big lights on their chests are awesome. Tony snorted, straightened his hair, and asked, Tell me, why did you ask me to come out? He knew that his brother would not call him out unless there was a situation. Rucker knocked on the reactor in front of his chest, and said, Did you find anything from those inside? When it came to business, Tony's expression immediately became serious, and he shook his head. They don't know anything. They only know that F1 officials saw their videos and paid them to take promotional photos. Lark nodded, as expected. In fact, the moment the 4 beauties saw Tony, they recognized him as the person who drove the Lambo that day, and their faces turned pale with fright. Naturally, they answered whatever Tony asked. Well behaved. JPEG. The 2 walked to the hotel lobby and sat down in the reception area. 2 men in black suits pushed open the door, and the owner of the hotel, Lou Tongnan, was crying and shouting from afar. Mr. Stark, it's great to see you. I was scared to death when I received the news. Do you need to call a doctor? I have a medical team on standby at any time. A few steps away, Lou Tongnan fully demonstrated what acting skills are, anxious, moved, and pleasantly surprised, without repetition. Others behind him couldn't find a chance to interrupt if they wanted to speak. Seeing the 2 sitting on the sofa unmoved, the green man gradually put away his expression. He coughed and said, Mr. Stark, I don't know if the assassin has been caught. If it's inconvenient to be outside, feel free to ask us if you need us. He tilted his body and motioned to the people behind him. In the country of Monaco, we still have some strength. When the opportunity came, a group of people quickly echoed. Yes, I have 2 transportation companies below me. You can contact me for anything in this regard. I run a bank. I'm good at flipping houses. At this time, a plump beauty in a light yellow coat said, I am in education. If he didn't stop the conversation from going viral later, Lark gave Tony a look and told him to send these people away quickly. Among ordinary people, Tony's name is better than Locke. Tony also wants to go back quickly. Wouldn't it be better to practice skills with 4 beauties than facing this group of rough men? He waved his hands irritably, fully demonstrating what it means to offend someone. I have already beaten him to death on the spot and buried him in the back garden. You don't need to intervene, just go back to me. Everyone opened their mouths and wanted to fight for it, but Tony waved his hand and the guard at the door came over to chase them away. A group of people once again put their hot faces on their cold buttocks, got up and left in desperation. The green boy was not spared either. Walking out of the hall, everyone naturally stepped aside and fell behind Lu Tongnan. After a long while, the man doing the transportation glanced at the men in black around him and sighed. Hey, this security team is only professional. Compared with them, the group of people under me are not worthy of the table. Indeed, I heard you say that I only noticed this now, as expected of an expert. The banker smiled and gave a thumbs up. PFF'd, PFF'd. The others immediately laughed. Everyone knows what the transportation man company is like. Security. The robbers are pretty much the same. Humph. The transport man twirled his fingers and said casually, Hey, I heard that someone's bank was robbed of $30 million last month, and now they are looking for the robbers all over the world. How pitiful. The transport man put his hands in his pockets, shook his head, and followed suit. As soon as these words came out, the audience was shocked. 3,000 million knives is not a small sum, and few people present could afford it. Their so-called net worth of over 100 million refers more to the sum of all their assets than to individuals. These are two different concepts. It was just a joke, but he didn't expect to send himself into the pit. The bank man was extremely depressed. He raised his foot and wanted to leave, but when he saw the green man walking slowly in front of him, he could only retract his foot obediently and followed behind with his head half down. Walking to the Rolls-Royce, the driver in a suit and tie took the initiative to open the door. After the green man got into the car, he quickly returned to the driver's seat. The driver started the car and slowly went down the mountain. The dark glass made it difficult to see inside. After leaving the monitoring area, the green man who had the demeanor of a big boss just now bent down, and his butt only dared to half fall on the seat. Boss, the sub-series assassination failed, the seeds have been planted. Quote. 10 seconds later, a man's heavy voice sounded in the carriage. Very well, let's move on to the next step. Yes. The green man looked up, and there was a crowd of people celebrating outside the window. A dim light came down from above, illuminating the entire arena. Thick ropes surround the surroundings to ensure that people will not fall out to the greatest extent. Tony wore boxing gloves, his muscles were bulging, and his sweat was like wax on his body, making him look full of sculptural beauty. On the opposite side, Lack, who was short and had no body, was beaten until his nose was bruised and his face was swollen. Ouch, don't call, I know I was wrong. Tony, no, big brother. You are my real big brother. I will never give you nicknames again. Please let me go. Tony refused to let go, and chased after him with 2 more punches. Do you still dare to trick me in the future? Luck was running around the ring with his butt in his hands, and accidentally fell to the ground with his left foot and right foot, crying and shouting. Don't dare, I really don't dare, I will be your wingman in the future. If you have trouble, I will take the blame. If you have a girl, you soak first. If you have a meal, you eat first. Tony stepped on Locke's back, raised his fists, and shouted excitedly, ha 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 ha, I won. At this time, many beautiful women suddenly appeared around the ring. They shouted Tony's name crazily, with careful eyes, Tony, Tony, Tony. Stimulated, Tony also yelled, Tony, 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 quote. It's so noisy, what is this guy going crazy this morning? Locke pulled off the blanket and wrapped it around his waist, and walked into the bedroom. Tony closed his eyes and shook his head, with a lustful smile on his face, and shouted his name like crazy. Tony. There was no response after shouting, and Locke mercilessly slapped him on the face with 2 big mouths. Clap. Let's see if you still dare to. Tony was suddenly interrupted while shouting in celebration. When he opened his eyes, he saw a pair of exaggerated pectoralis major muscles in front of him, with muscular arms on the left and right. Lark crossed his arms, giving him a murderous look. Gudong. In the dream, stalking. Locke. Now, me. Tony swallowed and forced an ugly smile on his face. Morning. Locke had a straight face, expressionless, Tony pulled the blanket and tied it tightly around his waist, pulling it so that it wouldn't fall off. Then he breathed a sigh of relief and said cautiously, why are you in my room? As he said that, he got off the bed, left the bedroom, opened the door directly, and landed 1 foot on the corridor. Muscle Lark, can't beat, can't beat. With such a big reaction, it is estimated that what I had just now was not a serious dream. It's okay, you disturbed me by talking in your sleep. Tony held on to the door frame and raised his eyebrows. Oh. It's a dream. In Stark Industries, the machinery is rumbling, and Hawkeye Clint Barton is wearing a white helmet and is distracted. Once upon a time, I was an elite agent. I fought tigers in the snowy mountains, ate snakes in the desert, and fought toothed sharks in the deep sea. Now, I am a glorious fighting coach, part-time construction site supervisor, part-time security personnel. If this continues, the next job may not be a fitness instructor. What's going on in my head? Clint shook his head and unscrewed the cap of the bottle, taking a swig. Then the phone rang and he took out his cell phone. Tony Stark, I want to build muscle, hurry up. Puff. Giggle. Ah bow, hurry up, the ball is about to be snatched away by the big cat. Haha, big cat, you were really good, let's play again, shall we? On the lawn outside the hotel, Pepper kept throwing tennis balls. 4 leopards turned into dogs and chased after them. After picking them up, they put them back in Pepper's palm and circled around her. Today's discount, cats and cats casually. Pepper's laughter never stopped. Rucker and Tony sat on the deck and had breakfast. On the left is bread and milk fritters, on the right is steak and broccoli, a muscle-building meal. At this time, 2 black spots flew across the sky in the distance, one behind the other, and the rumbling sound spread far away. A few minutes later, the Quinjet took the lead in arriving over the hotel with its absolute advantage. The hotel was originally designed with only 2 helipads reserved, so Pepper and Abau had no choice but to stop their entertainment activities and give up the lawn. The plane landed, and Agent Natasha, who had dyed her hair a new color, made a shining appearance with people. Pepper may have clashed with her because of the horoscope, threw the tennis ball, and turned on the mocking mode. You are so old, and you are still like a college student to become a girl fan. Natasha raised her hand to grab it, and the tennis ball landed firmly in her palm. She shook her head gracefully, and cherry blossoms seemed to float in the air. My old lady is so confident. Puff, cough, cough. The 2 who were eating broke their defenses. I haven't seen you for a few days, and the changes have been huge. Natasha returned the ball to its original owner, and Hill came up from the foot of the mountain and caught it. Boom. How many people did you bring? Hill asked. A Quinjet fighter can carry up to 10 people, which is obviously not enough. Natasha said. 3 teams, taking a military plane, are expected to arrive at noon. Hill nodded. 30 people are enough. During the conversation, Hatham came out of the main control room, walked to Luke's side, pointed to the helicopter in the distance, and said, Boss, the people from the French Continental Hotel have arrived. Oh, I see. Locke and Tony finished eating in 2s and 2s, and asked people to remove the plates. In a sense, he was asking someone to do something. Moreover, he had a good relationship with Gao Tai Daisy and could be regarded as half an ally. Basic etiquette is required. This is a black helicopter with the logo of the Continental Hotel painted on both sides of the fuselage, and the sound of the propellers can be heard several kilometers away. In comparison, the Quinjet wins. The plane landed, and a tall man in a black suit came down. He bent over and trotted out of the propeller area. Hatham, as a former colleague, went to greet him. Hatham, thank you for your help this time. Axel, I was only following orders. After shaking hands, he looked at the cool-looking aircraft next door that was several grades higher than their helicopter. He lowered his head and asked in a low voice, This is Continental Hotel part-time intelligence business. A secret department, I can only tell you so much. Hatham shook his head, then puffed out his chest, pretending to be calm, and said. They also received orders from their bosses to come to work. They will partner with us later to carry out tasks together. Understood, thank you. Axel said with a smile. Violent, unconventional playing cards are usually synonymous with the Secret Service. Therefore, it is best not to mess with it. The reason why the high table has been able to stand in the dark world for so many years is that when they perform tasks, they try to avoid affecting ordinary people. Commonly known, there are 13 numbers. With Hailsham's reminder, Axel has always been very measured in his subsequent contacts with S.H.I.E.L.D., and he will never ask questions that shouldn't be asked. At noon, 7 black SUVs drove up the mountain road and parked outside the hotel. 7 combat personnel got out of the vehicle and collected their equipment one by one from the Quinjet. After a while, 2 black buses arrived, and a group of black suits got off. After careful counting, there were exactly 30 people. And all AR-15 with Beretta 1911. The monitoring room was converted into a temporary command room. As the commander, Hill introduced the situation above. On the left is the team in black suits led by Assel, on the right is the combat team led by Natasha. Only the captain is present. The projector is on the wall, casting a photo of a bearded man. This man's name is Wilson Hampton, a native of Texas, who came to Monaco 10 years ago and opened a seaside restaurant. After investigation, he has no criminal record, and has not had contact with any special person during this period. Quote, in other words, the person is clean. But the more this happens, the more it proves that there is something wrong with this person. After Hill finished speaking, he looked at Axel. The Continental Hotel's intelligence system was unique, and she also wanted to know what special information the other party could come up with. Axel stretched his clothes, trying not to embarrass the high table. He walked to the stage, took out a tablet and connected it to the projector, and released 2 pictures. Continental Hotel's exclusive, memoirs. Everyone, I won't talk about the basic information. Everyone found the same. The above 2 documents were obtained from our intelligence personnel. This Wilson's life is very irregular. He opens and closes stores, purchases goods, and goes shopping, all depending on his mood. But every Sunday night at 8 o'clock, he will definitely go to the red light district of the port to find, well, to vent, rain or shine. Quote, there were many ladies present, and Axel spoke in an elegant way of speaking the essence of the ancient profession. Hill and the other ladies subconsciously turned their heads and looked at Tony, who was sitting at the back playing with his mobile phone. Qian Zanu is here, who can compete with her? Tony felt the gaze, raised his head proudly, and said sternly, I never give money. Crowd. The men present did not speak, but the envy in their eyes could not be hidden. Cough cough. Axel quickly got back to the topic. Due to time constraints, we can only find so much so far. The origin of the mysterious item in his hand is still unclear. The high table is willing to help. Apart from building a good relationship with Locke, it might not be the idea of getting the mysterious item in Wilson's hand. But in the current situation, even if he finds it, he may not be able to get it. Axel returned to his seat and glanced at the combat team opposite, who had remained silent. Hill nodded slightly. They really didn't find out the details of looking for the lady. Besides, the chief of the coffee cup has not responded yet. She projected a topographic map of No. 15 Asar Street on the wall, formed a circle along the periphery, and began to issue tasks. Because we don't know if Wilson still has a living mysterious object, so to be on the safe side, we have to attack quickly this time and try not to give him a chance to react. Assel, you pretend to be tourists and keep an eye on the street entrance to find out what's going on inside. Natasha, after confirming that there is no problem, you lead the team to rush in as quickly as possible, trying to save lives. Quote. After Hill finished speaking, his sharp eyes swept over Axel, stayed on Axel for a moment, and asked sternly, do you understand everything? Understood. XN. Set off. A group of people rumbled out of the command room, ready to set off. In order to coordinate the dispatch, they need to switch to SHIELD's communication device. Dozens of display screens on the wall were lit up one after another, and Hill and several intelligence officers began to work. After everyone went out, Locke was still sitting in his seat, playing with his mobile phone carelessly. Tony pushed him and asked, isn't it faster for the 2 of us to put on the armor to catch people? Why do we call them? The movement is slow, and the efficiency is low. Lark asked back, otherwise, what would I do raising them? If you have to do everything yourself, then what kind of billionaire am I? It seems, that's the truth. Tony nodded deeply. Except for the laboratory and women, he could command others to do other things, and he would never do it himself. However, this is also the first time that his subordinates have dealt with a mysterious incident alone, and Lark can't really ignore it. Rucker got up and left the command room, took out the suitcase from the room, and threw it over to Hatham, telling him to pay attention to safety. Then he returned to the command room and sat in front of the big screen. Boom. Hatham took the suitcase. The metal surface was obviously extremely cold, but at this moment his heart was warm. He solemnly placed the box at his feet, stretched out his hand and patted the roof of the car. Set off. The vehicle started immediately, and a dozen SUVs and 2 buses left the hotel one by one. After going down the mountain, it was broken into pieces and headed in different directions towards the Domaine district of Monaco. There is an abandoned warehouse outside Asar Street, which serves as a temporary assembly point. The start of F1 is approaching, and there are many pedestrians and vehicles on the street. By the time everyone arrives at the target location, it is already 2 o'clock in the afternoon. After stopping the car, everyone divided into 2 groups according to the plan. Axel took people to SR Street to check out the situation. Natasha waited for news and was dispatched at any time. This is a street built in the last century. The highest building is only 6 floors, with shops below and accommodation areas above. Off-white marble with rough texture makes them look like a low-profile version of ancient Greece. At a glance, almost all the balconies facing the street are planted with green plants, and the breeze makes a rustling sound. Halson was in a suit and leather shoes, with a suitcase in his left hand and a card in his right hand. His eyes scanned the street numbers of the shops one by one, and he kept chanting, looking anxiously as if he was looking for something. No. 8. Number 9. Number 10. No. 20. Number 21 of Azel Street. Shet, how could there be none? Halson cursed angrily, as if he couldn't believe it. He came all the way, and his strange behavior has long attracted the attention of shop owners. An old man with gray hair asked, "Sir, may I ask what you are looking for? I know the surrounding area quite well. If you don't mind, I can help you take a look." Hatham turned his head and shouted loudly, "Oh, God, you are really my savior." Suddenly everyone around him turned to look at him. Taking this opportunity, a few more figures inadvertently appeared in the crowd. Halson said as he walked, "The tourists are so crazy now, they have snatched up all the hotel rooms. I worked so hard and finally found a homestay on the internet, but I can't find his location. If you can help me point Lou, thank you so much." Thank you is a heavy word. The old man's already kind face was even brighter now. He accepted the note with a smile, and then looked at Hatham with pitiful eyes. "Sir, you have been deceived. The address number 20-2 on SR Street does not exist." Hatham was shocked. "How is it possible? I ordered it for $1,000. Fat, really rich." The old man shook his head. Hatham clutched the note tightly, cursed and left. In the command room, Locke put his feet on the table, tilted his head, and said to the iceberg beauty beside him, "How about it? My subordinate's acting skills are not bad." Hill's eyes narrowed, and she said coldly, "It's okay." On the big screen, through the miniature cameras on everyone, the situation around the target building has been analyzed. Building number 15 was next to an alley, and the windows were right there. There were no anti-theft devices installed, and there were no suspicious people around. Although strange, now is obviously not the time to be entangled. Hill pressed the intercom. "Axel, your people are hiding among the tourists and adapting." Natasha drove around to the back of Asar Street and attacked from the alley, and Jarvis will help you solve the traffic lights. Quote, receive. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.